They're going to ask me questions. I hope, first thing I learned when I was a business. I'm gonna miss the first 30 minutes.
Is it nearby? Oh yeah.
That was impressive. It's good though. I mean, because people are, they didn't care if I say I go to golf and go, hey, build a big 500 thing out here. It's awesome. Hey, I'm not part of the city. They decide not to be part of this by their own choice. I am evil. Hey, I'm
Councilman Moore. Thanks, Lee. All right, we're going to call Gardner City Council to order. Invite everybody in attendance to stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. We're going to get started this evening with the first of two presentations. This one's going to be a presentation of work done by the Street Sidewalks and Stormwater Advisory Committee regarding new sidewalk prioritization. And Brian, good evening to you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight's presentation is on the sidewalk prioritization done by the Street Sidewalk and Stormwater Advisory Committee. The steps used during the process include identifying the needs, prioritizing the areas, finalizing the rankings, and the presentation tonight before the Council. The need. The committee determined that there was, in fact, a need to begin looking at sidewalks or the lack of sidewalks throughout the community. The committee also recognized that it needed to look objectively at areas where sidewalks were missing. This objective look with definable criteria in the equation would be defendable if questions were asked. Starting last November, the committee worked to identify and prioritize areas for possible future sidewalks. The desire of the committee was to identify areas where the addition of sidewalk would improve the quality of life for our residents by addressing safety concerns, providing sidewalks near schools, connecting to parks and or trails, and providing sidewalks in areas of high-density development, both commercial and residential. The first step in the process was to identify the missing sections of sidewalk within the community. Once those areas were identified, criteria and weighing factors were developed. The starting point for developing the criteria, quite honestly, was doing an internet search. And we looked at the internet at other cities and how they prioritize, what criteria they use. We found a lot of different criteria, and we found a lot of issues with some of those criteria. But it did provide a good starting point for our discussions. Also, during the discussions, the committee received input from both school district and the police department. Ultimately, the criteria fell under three main headings: road type, safety improvement potential, and cost effectiveness. Under that, there were 13 subheadings. The highest weighing factor of those were school access, the posted speed limit, and law enforcement recommendations. There were a number of iterations done by the committee to arrive at the criteria, the headings, and the associated weighing factors. The final rankings were approved by the committee during their February meeting. The overall spreadsheet does contain the three main categories and 13 subheadings, along with a ranking based on total score on your left, a safety improvement score only, and the cost effectiveness score. And I understand this is difficult to read. First thing we looked at was road type. On the very left is the total score, the ranking for the projects. We broke them down into arterial, collector, and residential. Arterial being the busiest, we scored the highest. Residential being the slowest, we scored the lowest. The next thing we looked at was safety improvement potential. And quite honestly, those had the three highest scoring ones on it. It includes school access, posted speed limits, and the enforcements or recommendations from law enforcement. If you look at the left side of the spreadsheet, we have the ranking for the total score, and we have the ranking based on safety potential improvements only. Those pretty much mirror each other. The last thing we looked at was cost effectiveness. An example would be if a road was going to be rebuilt in the next 3 years, it didn't score that high because we'd be putting a sidewalk in with the rebuild. If the road was going to be looked at 10 years from now, it scored much higher on the sidewalk ranking. But we also looked at, tried to account for sidewalks that would be a real challenge to build, called that ease of installation. If it was easy to install, it scored higher than if it was going to be a real challenge, limited rights of way and open ditches. This is an overall view of the city. The missing areas of sidewalk are shown in the different colors, the legends to your bottom right. Try to get rid of some of the clutter. We deleted the aerial photograph. Things in red all scored higher than 8.5. Those would be our highest priority catalog or category. This is in the downtown area. Again, everything in red scored greater than 8.5. In this picture, Center Street is the only thing that scored greater than 8.5. That's from Main up to McKinley. Other streets that scored high: Moonlight Road, Warren to Pinewood, Waverly Road, 175th to Madison. I mentioned Center Street, East Warren, Moonlight to Conestoga, and 175th Street between Poplar and Waverly. Three other ones I have listed: East Santa Fe, 183rd, and East Lincoln Lane, scored at 8.5. They are right at that cutoff, so we did include those also. Where do we go from here? The next steps are to present to the City Council, as part of the 2017 budget initiatives, a program for the installation of new sidewalks throughout the community. And starting later this year, the committee will be looking at areas where existing sidewalks have fallen into disrepair. And I do definitely want to thank the committee for all the work on the project. It took a lot of their time to develop the criteria and weighing factors and to arrive at where we are tonight. The committee took this very seriously and did a fantastic job.
All right, we'll open the floor for public comments. If there's anyone in attendance that would like to make public comments on presentation item number 1, now would be your opportunity. With no one coming forward, questions for Brian about presentation item number 1?
I just have one
Christina?
quick question, Brian. So as far as the next steps, when you present as part of the budget initiative, will those be, are you sending out formal RFPs for these, or is it just based on internal cost estimate?
Well, what we'll look at is actually going back to the committee and trying to define, there's 5 that rated above 8.5. I think we'll try to concentrate on those. We'll come up internally with some budget numbers for that. We have a pretty good idea of what it'll cost to construct those. And then we'll work with Cheryl and putting together that budget initiative.
Okay, great, thank you.
I just have one quick question. It's about the sidewalks at 175th and Waverly Road. Those have been a bugaboo for a while, and when we know that we have an interim access in place for some of those folks from the subdivisions that are in that area. We do know that 175th Street in particular is something that we are targeting for a rebuild or a widening.
Correct.
And that, I'm assuming, is why it's sitting number 6 instead of number 2, because of that particular component, correct?
One of the weighing factors was the anticipation of when it would be reconstructed.
Yeah.
That's a project that will be reconstructed, we hope, fairly soon. So we actually, I believe, show the design in the 2017 CIP starting on that process.
Yep. And then the second question was about Waverly Road. There's no plans at this point to widen that to 4 lanes currently, right?
Well, currently, we don't have any plans for that. Our biggest item right now is actually get the intersection designed. Because of the flooding issues we have at the intersection, we have to make sure that we size everything underneath it properly. We'll be raising that intersection up, and that kind of defines the starting point. I think at some point, Waverly definitely could be, obviously, a minimum of 3 lanes, with turn lanes at the intersection and possibly 4.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
I just have one more question. Was that, we are all, I think, familiar with some ADA concerns specifically regarding sidewalks. Was there consideration, or did you all look at that as well as you were going through? So more frequently traveled areas toward amenities and so forth?
We looked at, one of our criteria were, again, connections to schools, parks and trails, but also to high-density developments and commercial. So we did have a component in there for if someone's trying to get to a business, or if, whether it's Conestoga or an apartment complex, if there was connectivity there.
Okay.
And that helped, like Center Street. We also had a category if there's already sidewalk on one side, it didn't necessarily score that well. Center Street already has a sidewalk on the east side, but with those other factors, it came in, scored well.
Okay, great, thank you.
This is something that will be revisited maybe annually or?
Actually, I think that'd be actually a good idea with the committee to go through and update what we've done and any new information that we have.
I just want to say thanks to Lee and his group for doing this, and Brian for putting up with it. I know it was probably tough on you, so congratulations on making it through.
Lee, you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would like to just say that it was a very arduous process that was undertaken by the committee, and we had Adam Boydston was particularly vocal on his favorite intersection and sidewalk concern, but ultimately even he agreed with the rest of the committee, and it was pretty much the criteria that we settled on and how it was scored was unanimously decided. So I'd like to thank Brian for his presentation and for putting up with the committee and himself for the last few weeks, so that's it.
I'm very happy with how quickly we were able to turn this around. The Street Sidewalks and Stormwater Committee was the first of the new advisory committees to get going. First meeting was August or September?
Actually, September 1.
September 1. So that's a lot of work product in a short period of time. And yes, I know that Adam's not here, is he? There was a little enlightened self-interest on his part. Obviously the criteria that was put together helped him see the greater good as opposed to just the one intersection. So, we've come a long way, and I look forward to seeing these proposals for the 2017 budget. So, unless anyone has something else, Brian, thank you.
Thank you.
We can move on to presentation item number 2. This will be the presentation of the polling results of the Boats, RVs, and Trailer Town Hall meeting. Larry, good evening.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, Council. Thank you. At the January 5th, 2015 City Council meeting, the City Council adopted changes to the regulations for the storage of boats, RVs, and trailers. And during the past year, there have been some changes brought forth to the council, suggestions brought forth to the council, resulting in a town hall meeting that was held on February 16th of this year in the City Council chambers. And the public provided input through the use of electronic polling, and additional comments were received from the public. The goal of the town hall meeting was to obtain this input and to consider reasonable rules that are appropriate for Gardner's neighborhood context, which are well understood, accepted, and are easy to enforce. And to do this, we have to consider the rules that can be balanced between different interests. We want to consider the use of the property and the personal choice in regard to vehicle storage, but we also have to consider the bigger picture view of our community, and that people expect that regulations will create a predictable environment where their financial investment in their property will be protected through the preservation of consistent neighborhood character. If too many vehicles or inappropriate types of vehicles are stored in compact urban environments, it may force vehicle congestion onto our public streets. And this can and may create safety hazards for pedestrians, motorists, and public safety vehicles trying to respond to emergencies. Reasonable regulations can support quality of life for city residents. New residential neighborhoods in Gardner are typically a compact urban form, often referred to as smart growth, meaning it's more efficient use of land, which makes infrastructure more affordable and sustainable. But this doesn't leave much space for the outdoor parking of vehicles other than those for everyday use. Many side yards are no deeper than the minimum requirement, which can be as little as 7 feet. Because of landscaping, air conditioner, side yard space can be limited, making it difficult or impossible for some people to access their side or rear yards for vehicle parking. Current rules have been stated many times, but in order to make it clear to anybody who might not have attended the town hall meeting, what we're talking about is that part of the city municipal code that discusses and pertains only to the outdoor storage of boats, camping vehicles, trailers, RVs, pickup campers, motorhomes, recreational vehicles, and hauling trailers in R1 and R2 neighborhoods. It should also be made clear that if you live in a neighborhood that has, I think my allergy medicine's wearing off, I apologize. It should also be made clear that if you live in a neighborhood that has a homeowners association, they may have guidelines or restrictions, that the city code that are more restrictive than the current city code currently allows. The purpose of our trailer and RV storage regulations in Title 8 is under property maintenance and Title 18 under zoning in the municipal code is, although it's not clearly stated, is the presumed purpose of the restrictions are to maintain the residential character of residential areas and to protect the quality of life and property values in those residential districts. Improperly stored trailers and RVs threaten the residential character and quality of life in those districts. Some of the options to consider are the reasonable number of vehicles that could be stored outdoors in a typical city lot without impacting the neighborhood character, the preferred placement of those vehicles on the lot to avoid crowding of neighbors or site obstructions, the size and types of vehicles that are allowed to be stored in the driveways, the distance between the property line and the vehicles stored in the yards, screenings for vehicles stored in yards, the parking surfaces that those vehicles sit on. The polling results that were done, we used the 64 electronic polling devices at the town hall meeting, and additional 9 people submitted written answers on papers to all these questions. All those polling results were averaged together in the percentage that you see, and so the percentages that I give you may be slightly different than those percentages that were presented spontaneously at the polling event, because we have factored in those additional votes. Are you a resident of Gardner? Overwhelmingly, the crowd that we had that night in this room was. 95% of them responded in the positive to that, 4% were not. In general, would you like the rules to be less restrictive? 51% said yes. More restrictive, 23% said yes. Or left unchanged. If you add those last two together, you really have a 51 to 49% ratio, because the last two are really basically similar in nature, left more restrictive or left unchanged. What is a reasonable total number of non-passenger vehicles to be stored outdoors in residential neighborhoods? 12% want nothing stored out there. They want the trailers, boats, RVs, campers, whatever, gone. They would like a nice, clean neighborhood, and all you park in your driveway is pickup trucks or cars, vehicles that you drive every day. 32% felt one was appropriate, 41% felt two were appropriate, and 15% felt that you could have more than two. Should storage of non-passenger vehicles be allowed in the front driveway? 12% said nope. 32% said yes, but only if there's no reasonable access to your side or rear yard. And then 42% felt like yes, storage should be allowed in the front driveway. And strangely, 13% had no response to that question. We're not sure why. Which types of vehicles should be allowed to be stored in your front drive? Currently, we only allow one hauling trailer if you use it for work. That's our current regulation. 12% felt that that was okay. Add a boat or any hauling trailer, 12% again, this is a different 12% felt that was okay. Or any type of vehicle, in other words, we give you a choice, what would you store? 44% felt that would be the best solution. And 31% felt that none except passenger vehicles should be there. So again, we have kind of a split in the voting. Do you think there should be a height limit for boats, RVs, or trailers stored in the front driveway? 25% felt yes, there should be height limits. 41% said no, and 34% said, I don't think they should be stored in the front driveway. So it's kind of a negative question, more negative here than positive. I would tell you that the larger number, the 34%, when we received our written comments, we did written comments online after the town hall meeting. The largest majority of our written comments affected this question the most. They expressed, they may not have been at the meeting, but they expressed themselves here that they thought there should not be any parking in the front driveway. Should vehicles stored inside and rear yards be required to have a minimum distance from property lines? 28% said yes. 30% said no, not as long as there's a privacy fence or some other kind of screening allowing you not to see that particular object. 41% felt no, 1% no response. Should vehicles stored inside or rear yards be screened by a fence or appropriate landscaping? And this question was really more phrased for those corner lots where we have people that own, basically they have roads on two sides of them, and so it's really much harder for them to be able to use a side yard or to maybe access their backyard because of the road configurations. So should they be stored in rear yards be screened by a fence or appropriate? So 43% said yes, 56% said it wasn't necessary. Which surfaces are appropriate? This gets back to what we currently allow, which is hard surfacing or grass. Those are our two options. We don't allow anything else. So 30% felt hard surfaces or pavers or concrete or asphalt was appropriate. 7% said some type of vegetation was appropriate. And 61% are the largest to go along with the first two, just basically said either one is appropriate. and 2% didn't answer the question. We combined the written comments from town hall meeting and the comments page, and we supplied those to you. You should have all of those that were given to you earlier. And we provided the written comments just as we received them. The online comments were basically cut and pasted from the, as we received them. We did, however, try and put them into a grouping for you. There were often more than one comment in an email about one thing. So they might comment about parking, and they might comment about screening in the same comment. So we tried to split those apart, so you actually wound up with more comments than you actually did comment emails total. So we had 28 that were to loosen restrictions in total, and 34 were basically to increase restrictions in some manner. The loosen restriction comments broke down in the following 4 categories. Allow a choice of what's parked in the driveway. Park one of what they want, whether that's a boat, whether that's a camper, whether that's a trailer that they use in their job. Allow a longer loading and unloading time. We currently allow 48 hours once in a 30-day period. So if you take 48 hours to load up and go on your trip, when you come home, you're in theory out of time to unload, to park in your driveway and unload. And that was a comment that we heard several times, both in the written comments and in the town hall meeting. Allow time to repair by permit, no charge. So one of the side comments we had was quite frequently people who own these types of trailers and so forth have to do some work on them. And we allow that, and what we do is we ask that they call us and let us know why this vehicle or particular thing is parked in their driveway and how long it's going to be there. However, we don't currently permit for that. And so what we thought we might want to do is take that into consideration, and that was offered as a suggestion in the comments. And then one that we had that we talked about in the town hall meeting, but is not on the parking, is to allow gravels of parking service. So that's a loosening of restrictions as a request. On the Titan side, these were the items that basically were grouped into all the comments. Don't allow anything in the residential areas at all. And again, it was quite a large number of those comments that came in. Do not allow storage on grass areas. And the thinking behind this and the written comments that we got were that grass really erodes very quickly. If you have something parked on it for a long period of time, day in and day out, say 6 or 7 months of the year, you basically could wind up with dead spots in your yard and other issues that could cause issues. And so they felt like grass really wasn't a very good storage mechanism, although we currently allow that. Increased setbacks and height requirements and screening requirements. Those 3 things have been combined together because those were really mentioned several different times by different people, but they're all a tightening of our current restrictions. We currently don't require screening or fencing unless you're on a corner lot and you get pre-approval for that. So at this point in time, staff is looking for recommendations for the City Council to receive and discuss these results and to provide staff some direction regarding land development code regulations, because we are in the middle of looking at our land development code review. That is coming to you later in the year. So any changes that you might want to implement or look at could very easily be brought into the code as we're bringing that forward to you. We would not ask that we go through and do a text amendment to the current code, because that really wouldn't make much sense. By the time we went through that process and actually brought it to you, it would be about the same time we're bringing the new code to you. So it would be kind of a waste of time to try and tweak our current code or change that. So any solutions or suggestions that we have, we would hope could be written into the new code. We do have what we feel are some things for you to take into consideration. One, the things that we heard most often that could be taken into account in our current code and could be made change-wise into a new code if we adopt it, would be to allow the public a choice of one item in which they park in their driveway. It really doesn't matter that much to us, code-wise, whether that's a boat or a small camper or a trailer, whatever it is, as long as it fits that space from your garage to short of the sidewalk right-of-way, it really shouldn't matter that much. So limiting it to that size, though, is important, and it should never interfere with the sidewalk right-of-way or impede it. 2 would be to allow a longer time period for loading and unloading of campers and RV for a trip. Currently, we allow 48 hours for 30 days, a 30-day time period. that could more reasonably be 48 hours to load, and then another 48 hours when you come home to unload. And tacked onto that particular section of the code would be a reasonable thought that if you're going to do a repair on that, you're going to do the work on it yourself, then you could go online and you could fill out a permit letting us know what's going to be where and how long it's going to be and how long you think that repair is going to be. Then when we drive by, we know why it's there. We don't have to stop. We don't have to call you. We don't have to write a letter. Now, if it's there past the time, we'll probably do some checking. But that would be something that we could think would be a very easily managed process and allows the public a lot more leeway with how they manage, how they use their stuff. On the other side of the coin, limiting storage of campers and RVs to the side and the rear of yard where appropriate. If it's on the side of the residence, there's a corner, probably would need some screening of some type if we're going to allow that. It probably also needs to make sure that it's well within the setback requirements of any visual triangle or side triangle, any safety precautionaries that we would want to see and look at as you turn a corner trying to get onto a more busy traffic way, or even from one residential street to another. So we would like to think that those things would be taken into consideration, and if you're going to take that into consideration and allow that, then you would take a look at those particular items. Also, the maintaining the total number of non-vehicle items would be a maximum of 2. We think 2 is a very reasonable number. It allows you to put one beside your house or behind your house, and then one in the driveway, or you could put one on the side and one on the back and none in your driveway, which then allows you to use your driveway what it's for, which is for the pickups and the regular vehicles that you drive in and out in every day. So these are the things that we think would create a balanced approach for us to look at. We hope that you would take those into consideration and would give us some direction as to what you think is reasonable for us to look at under the current coming code changes. Thank you.
We're going to open the floor for public comments regarding presentation item number 2. Anyone wanting to make public comment, now is your opportunity. With no one coming forward, questions for Larry?
I have some I think that might be beneficial for council to hear. Some of you know, I recently bought a motorhome. It's even too ridiculous for me to consider parking it in my yard, so my wife asked me right away what we're going to do, and I said, hey, I'm just going to go over here to Olathe RV and park it in their parking lot. You know, they rent space out there. I drove it in, and the first thing the next morning after I got it, went and dropped it off to get some work done, went in and talked to them about renting some space. They're completely out of space. They have been for over a year. And so tomorrow Cheryl is meeting with them. I'm going to be in the meeting about doing some expansion out there because they realize they need to do it. They've been trying to get together with some city folks, and so I kind of just said, hey, look, here's the deal, call Cheryl and make it happen. And so, but I think it's critical when we look at what we're going to limit that we realize that right now, if we made the change, that there is nowhere for anyone to go. So that's all I was going to say. So.
Okay.
I just have, I guess, and this isn't really a question, Larry. I mean, from my perspective, I'm absolutely fine with extending to when we rewrite anyhow, as long as we're not going to change our enforcement policy that we have in place until then. I believe that whatever we decide needs to be simple and straightforward. I'm not into all these height measurements, and I'm really not a fan of extending the time because I think that's just another thing you have to measure and enforce. So from my perspective, I would rather we just say 2 items on the property. It can be driveway, it can be side of the house, it can be back of the house, but set some stipulations there versus trying to create a bunch of things that we have to measure and that code has to enforce.
And I like exactly the way you're thinking, Christine, on this, because if we just say 2 vehicles, if they don't have access to their side or rear yards, the 2 vehicles can be put in their front drive if they can fit it in the space. But, I mean, if they can get side and rear view access, I think that they should try to use that as much as possible. So, you know, and the whole issue of gravel's not really part of this discussion. I really don't think that that's even viable given the environmental issues that I think we've all discussed here, there are ways that we can, like using the lattice, the plastic lattice, or the concrete lattice, that would work. But, yeah, I'm not interested in concrete, in gravel.
Well, real quick, is everybody on board with the council president on not using the gravel?
Well, I'm not opposed to it, but I don't know that I really know enough about, we kind of heard we heard that it's not really a part of this, it's more of a public works, maybe that type of, so I agree that it's not part of this conversation, and I'm not looking to necessarily change that requirement at this time, but I can't say that I absolutely
You're
oppose it for
talking
whatever.
strictly in a residential?
I'm talking about strictly residential. I'm talking about R1, R2, which is what we're talking about
Right.
tonight.
That's what I want to make sure we're clear on.
Yeah.
I'm thinking from the standpoint of just storage in the vehicles for R1 and R2, there's environmental concerns of gravel. That's the biggest problem. EPA with runoff and stormwater, things.
I'd like to make that a separate discussion
Yeah,
altogether.
it is.
Let's-
It is different.
I'd like to just talk about what we're gonna allow in the driveway and not allow in the driveway or on the property.
Right.
And then we can talk about gravel, or no gravel at a later date.
And that's fine, I understand that. So the screening requirements for side and rear yards for corner lots is pretty important, particularly from the perspective of, as you said, turns, to another street if there is a large recreational vehicle there. You've got to look at sightline restrictions probably on that. But those are for corner lots only.
I would ask a question, sir. You mentioned two vehicles in the driveway. We currently only allow one.
Correct.
And it's a hauling trailer. So if you were to go to allowing two of something in their driveway,
Yes.
you're
Accommodating.
expanding driveway use, doubling it.
Okay. Well, the council president is suggesting two vehicles, which would
On
lend
the
it.
property.
Anywhere on the property.
On the property, okay.
On the
On
property. So if they only have access to their front driveway, we're talking two vehicles in their front driveway, if they can fit them.
What's council's feeling on
I'll
that?
just think on that.
I'm fine with it, because, as long as it's their driveway, as long as they're not blocking the sidewalk,
My primary concerns are, public safety, and that's being able to see around corners and.
Yep.
And if it's a really steep lot, parking a giant trailer on a really steep slope and, people using those,
Blocks.
those $4 blocks from Walmart to block the tires, that makes me nervous. And public access to public right-of-ways, like sidewalks.
Yes.
Blocking the sidewalk is a no-go for me. So if I don't really care about the number of vehicles in the driveway or in the side yard. I'm kind of open to that. Two vehicles sounds fine to me. Anywhere on the currently allowed areas of the property, either the backyard, the side yard, or in the driveway, or any combination thereof. Seems like it's pretty simple. I'm with Christie, I like it simple.
Yeah.
No measurements, no sending somebody out there with a ruler to figure out, if they're in compliance or not.
Todd, you're in the minority here.
Yeah,
You're-
well, I like the height restriction as well. I mean, you can get into some giant RVs and
I've got
giant.
one. You should see it.
Yeah.
But it's not
And-
to my house.
Well, yeah, and if you're, that's,
What's too high then?
well, I think there's some, I think you can actually base it off like the roof line. So much of the roof line covered, or so much percentage, up to the roof line.
I'll be honest, most of the houses in Gardner, they're side-to-side split, so your roof line's gonna be underneath every one of your RVs just because of height restrictions on the highway. So, they probably already meet that standard, even the tallest one.
Yeah. Even your biggest Prevos rarely get over, 13, 14 feet. I mean,
And, I believe average roof line is over 30.
I did, in earlier research on this, I did Google some ridiculous parking situations, trying to figure out what the worst-case scenario was. I did see somebody park a yacht in a driveway, and it was and it would challenge the roof lines of
Oh,
our
yeah.
homes here in Gardner. for
There's,
this yacht.
there's no way they're gonna fit a yacht in our driveways here. I really don't think so.
I mean, you could fit some pretty
That's someone
large.
saying, challenge accepted.
I mean, I guess I'm even okay with the two vehicles in the driveway, I guess, but, I mean, you realize then they're gonna be parking on the street, and that creates more congestion along the street as well.
Well, and I live in an older neighborhood, you know, we've got some issues getting around just with people parking on the streets as it is.
And I believe one of your neighbors parks his RV on the corner there too, doesn't he? And behind his
Well, it's
fence.
behind his fence,
Right,
though.
exactly. So, I mean,
Yeah,
it's already
it's-
in a great place, but you still have an issue with parking, so, because everybody has 2 kids and 4 cars and whatever else, so, I mean, it's,
Well, that's true.
I was reading through the comments that we received online, and it seems like an awful lot of folks are happy with the way they are, the restrictions currently are. At least the ones that replied to the online.
I think that the biggest issue is those individuals who do not have access to their side and rear yards for whatever reasons, either small lot lines or, you know, not enough depth in the backyard, and they have no place to put any of their, non-passenger vehicles. And it's, you know, putting a severe burden on the current restriction, but, and especially given what you just said about Olathe Ford RV and the fact they don't have any space out there. I'm thinking if allowing a vehicle for those individuals, you know, is something that can be managed, and, you know, Christina's, you know, approach is, I think, a sound one, then why not allow it? For those people, at least, in a minimum.
Okay, well now,
Yeah?
it seemed like we were,
I thought we did too, but I mean, I understand that people don't like to have the regulations changing. There is a problem for people who are, right now, do not have access to their side and rear yards. You're telling them that they're gonna have to house it someplace, and there's no place close to house them.
well,
I'd like
If
to
we
see a
were-
flat two, and I'd like to see that, you know, whether they put it side rear or driveway is, doesn't bother me either way.
I agree with that, height restrictions too. I'm not sold on why it needs to be, I mean, there's just, it's so nebulous on what height is too tall. I mean, short of the yacht, of course. We can put a no yacht clause in.
No houseboats either, huh?
I think, are there other, I'm sure there are other communities with height restrictions built in.
There are, and you may remember that the principal planner gave you some documentation on 9 or 10 cities last year that basically was the premise for your original changes back in 2015. And they do have some height restrictions and some length restrictions, and those were really only basically took into consideration the very large RVs, Class A's and Class B's in residential neighborhoods, which are, there's hardly a good way to park them on the street, let alone get them into your driveway, because they extend beyond into the street and are a safety hazard. So those were basically where the regulations went into on height and length. They also had, Olathe basically had one also that said that if you could put it beside your garage and it didn't extend past the front of your house, you could do it, but they did limit it to 40 feet.
So where are we with this?
well, it seems like we're 2 vehicles in the driveway,
Or
No.
anyplace else. You know,
yeah,
two vehicles.
2 vehicles,
on the
period,
property.
but,
On your property.
but we'll,
Not in the front yard.
Not in the front yard.
Right.
Yes.
right.
The driveway.
Even I have
yard,
stipulations.
or-
Yeah.
And the rest of the restrictions are the same then? No changes to them?
Yeah,
Is that the only change?
that's what it's looking like.
We currently have screening requirements for the corner lots.
Yes,
correct?
sir.
Yes.
And that would not change.
Anyone else want to add anything to that before, because next step's bringing this back for council meeting.
It would be brought back with the total land development code, sir.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did
We
we,
would,
did
it'd
we-
be individually.
Did we talk about extending the hours? Did we discuss that fully?
No, we didn't.
Won't be needed if we're they can
Won't
put
be
two
needed,
vehicles
okay.
on their property.
Well, yeah, but it's like me, I come to load up if I do 48 hours. I mean, if I do every weekend, if I'm doing a show and I get 2 hours or 3 hours to load it up and get ready to clean it, whatever.
Is it one of your two vehicles?
Yeah, but it won't fit in the driveway.
Oh, you're correct about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think I like the idea of the permit thing, if just if nothing else, a notification, not necessarily permit, because permit means, you know, typically I'm shelling out money, which I'm doing plenty of that anyway. But the fact that if I could, you know, have something we could send in to say, hey, look, it's here and it's I might run over my 48 hours, that'd be ideal.
We currently accept people calling us and letting us know it's there, and it's usually what's happening is they're loading it Saturday and Sunday and leaving Monday morning.
Mhm.
So it's like 54 hours or, you know, some small amount over.
So, playing worst case scenario, I mean, you get the junkiest boat that's half torn apart,
Ah,
and that's okay?
no.
Yep.
No.
Well, okay,
Now,
so now, well, let's talk about this, because.
Yeah, that's a good point,
We-
because,
It is a good point, and but I think we need to define, because what you don't wanna get into is this, because I have a boat that's $40,000, I should be allowed to do this, versus somebody who has a boat that's $200, I can't do it. So,
yeah.
we need to talk about,
Well,
I mean, what-
it has
for a
to be-
boat, it'd have to be licensed, I mean, for sure, if it's gonna be on the lake in Kansas, so it'd have to be.
My thinking is, it just needs to be a roadable vehicle.
Yeah, operational, not on
If it's operational,
blocks.
that's cool.
And if you're a boat, I would even say with a boat, we might be, asking for a tarp when it's not in use, you know, have some sort of a, you know, a covering for it.
We could add that, but we currently have on the books inoperable.
Yeah.
If the vehicle is inoperable, unless it's being repaired,
Mhm.
and it has to be tagged as part of being operable, which is the licensing for the boats,
Yep.
then we can check all of that as far as operable.
Mhm.
So we're currently enforcing, or your current code has those enforceable restrictions without any changes. Now, we don't make them tarp them.
I don't think that's necessary, most boat people are gonna tarp it anyway.
They're gonna cover their boats if
I mean,
they're
they're
in good repair
gonna
anyway. Yeah.
spend a whole lot of time repairing them.
So one change.
Okay.
Sounds like it.
I like it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
simple enough. Thank you, Larry. Simple enough.
They only
Took a
take-
minute to get there, but, you know, and it took us 25 minutes in a town hall meeting and
Exactly.
electronic communication. You know, I would like to point out, Lee's absolutely right. You know, some of these results that came back in show that people were almost an equal amount of people
Mhm.
were happy with the restrictions the way that they were before. I'm glad to go through these kinds of town hall meetings and items like this on the agenda, but let's weigh them carefully when we're considering whether or not we're looking to amend ordinances that were just recently passed.
You're correct.
Because I think this was helpful, and we're making some changes, but I think we can see that maybe we weren't that far off in the first place in this.
I think it's really, it really is a strong testament to the staff, with all of the public feedback and the opportunities for public feedback that we've gotten recently. It's been pretty awesome.
Oh, yeah, they're doing a great job getting all this stuff compiled.
Absolutely.
Very good. Next item on the agenda is public comments. The members of the public are welcome to use this time to make comments about city matters or items on the agenda that are not part of a public hearing. As we are not having a public hearing this evening, you can make public comments about anything. Understand for anybody that's not a regular, we do allow for public comments after presentation on all business items, so you don't necessarily have to speak right now if you're here to talk about something that's coming up later in the agenda. So, with that, we'll open public comments. With no one coming forward, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Is there a council member that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? If not, I would entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, Melton, second, Shute, that we approve the consent agenda. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Any abstention? Consent agenda passes. New business item number 1 is consider adoption of a resolution approving the execution of a funding agreement with Day 3 LLC. Cheryl, it's always nice to see you at the podium instead of at the seat. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. The resolution before you tonight is the first step towards moving towards annexation on the east side of Interstate 35. The property in discussion, more specifically, is located at 175th and Clare Road. The governing body established that economic development was the #1 priority. And over the past 3 years, we have been positioning the city through the adoption of the Economic Development Strategy Plan, the adoption of the Economic Development Incentive Policy, and with telling our story, branding. The city has a long-standing relationship with Kutak Rock, a name synonymous with successful economic development projects. I'm going to share a few of their projects with you tonight. Miriam Town Center, Tax Increment District, 920,000 square feet of retail. It is located at I-35 and Johnson Drive. It's where the Dick's Sporting Goods is located. Prairie Fire Museum, including restaurants, commercial buildings, and residential apartment units. Over 61 acres located on 135th. The Miriam Village Tax Increment District, 349,000 square feet, home of the IKEA store located at I-35 and Johnson Drive. So we have Joe Serrano here tonight. He is going to talk about the funding agreement that was developed by their firm, as well as Benjamin Allison, who is here representing the applicant, Day 3.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Joe Serrano, Kutak Rock. As Cheryl mentioned today, this evening, before you for consideration, is a resolution authorizing or approving the execution of a funding agreement. The developer, Day 3 LLC, in partnership with the Van Tile Trust Real Estate Group, has requested that the city consider certain economic development incentives for the proposed development. As Cheryl mentioned, it's at 175th Street and South Clare Road. Among the incentives that we've heard and understand that the developer may be requesting is the tax increment financing district, a community improvement district, and industrial revenue bonds for sales tax exemption on the construction materials. As Cheryl mentioned, this is really the very first step in the process. This is solely for the city to consider the approval of this funding agreement. The funding agreement really provides for a mechanism whereby the developer will pay for certain expenses associated with this process. Those expenses generally are reflective of administrative and professional expenses, counsel fees, certain studies from third-party consultants, and expenses that the city may incur. Under the funding agreement, the developer will deposit a $50,000 retainer with the city, and from that amount, the city can draw off to pay for these expenses. As Cheryl mentioned, Mr. Allison is here with the law firm, the Polsinelli Law Firm, who can answer any possible questions you may have with respect to the proposal, and I stand for any questions with respect to the funding agreement.
Very good.
evening, Mayor and Council. Ben Allison of Pulcinelli here on behalf of our client, Day 3 LLC. I don't have much to add tonight in addition to what Cheryl and Joe just told you, other than the fact that we are very excited to be working with the city on this project. The development is a priority for us, and we are ready and willing to move it along. Stand for any questions you may have at this time.
Okay. Real quick, we're gonna open the floor for public comments. You might wanna just stay there. We haven't had a whole lot of interaction yet. Maybe that's coming later. Is there anyone here that would like to make public comments regarding new business item number 1? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Well, maybe not forever. Council President. With no one coming forward, questions from council to Joe, Benjamin, city staff?
I have a real quick one. Are you aware of any other municipalities that have an agreement like this?
A funding agreement?
Well, I mean, what we're doing here for Day 3, I mean, the type of...
I feel like the IRBs, CIDs, TIFs...
Right, those things, okay. I guess my thing is I want to make sure we're separating ourselves from the rest of the group with this agreement, so, is that...
With respect to the types of development, we've handled many of very similar types of requests for economic incentives. With respect to the funding agreement, this is really relatively standard. It's a typical form of I don't want to say it's a form of agreement because it's unique to the proposed development, but relatively the concept is the city is going to incur certain expenses, and because of those expenses, the city may approve the proposed funding agreement to pay for those expenses. It does not obligate the city to grant any of these incentives at all. In fact, there's a provision in the agreement that says that this doesn't bind the city to any particular grant of the request. It is simply for the city to evaluate, to investigate, and to analyze the proposed request. At some point in the future will come for each of these types of incentives requested.
For consideration.
For consideration.
And I think what Rich might be thinking about is we've introduced a new incentive to our incentive policy that we anticipate someone will take advantage of at some point in the future, which is a little unusual. So, but when we get back for the development agreement, my guess is that's when we can probably have that discussion.
Yeah.
Other questions?
Yeah, well, first of all, I think this is a historic day for Gardner, and I don't think that can be understated. We are now planting a flag on the other side of I-35, and we are absolutely thrilled to have Day 3's partnership in this venture, so put that for the record. The second thing is the $50,000, is that just a standard retainer or a standard funding for this particular arrangement, or how is this derived? How is this number come up with?
There's not a necessarily standard amount. Based on the magnitude of the project, the amount of work,
Sure.
This is the initial retainer. There's a provision in the agreement that if the fees exceed or the expenses exceed that there will be additional requests. It was in fact a negotiated point.
Sure.
But based on the magnitude of this project or the proposed incentives, we believe it's a reasonable request.
Okay, great. And there are some additional. We just added some additional incentives that I know that we had discussed with Day 3 in the past, and would like to see if they'd be our inaugural recipient of these requests. So again, we're thrilled. We're absolutely thrilled, and just happy to get this kicked off.
Anyone else? Okay. Gentlemen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Any other comments? I'd entertain a motion on
So moved.
resolution
Second.
1945.
All right.
So motion, Moore, second Harrison, that we adopt resolution number 1945, approving the execution of a funding agreement related to the proposed economic development project generally located at 175th Street and South Clair Road with Day 3 LLC. City Clerk, can you call roll?
Councilmember Harrison?
Yes.
Councilmember Melton?
Yes.
Councilmember Moore?
Yes.
Councilmember Shute?
Yes.
Councilmember Winters?
Yes.
Resolution number 1945 passes. Very good. Gentlemen, thank you for coming today.
Thanks.
Jeannie, I know we usually do this after council meetings. Do you have that resolution on you? We're not delaying on this. We've waited long enough.
I agree.
Sorry, it's a break from the norm, everyone. But, as the council president said, this is kind of a historic resolution inasmuch as planning for development on the other side of the interstate can begin in earnest and in partnership.
All right.
Jeannie, you can put your signature on there too. Go right ahead. So, done. On to the next step, everybody. Next item on the agenda, consider approval of an agreement with the Southwest Johnson County Economic Development Corporation for 2016. Larry Powell, welcome back to the podium.
Thank you, Mayor and Councilman. In the past years, the City of Gardner has had an operational agreement with the Southwest Johnson County Economic Development Corporation for economic development services, and the 2016 agreement includes funding for that organization in the amount of $35,000. The proposed agreement outlines the terms for the 2016 funding. Staff has met in the past and will continue to meet with Mr. Martinet to discuss the work plan for 2016 as stated in Section 2 of the agreement. Mr. Martinez is here to make a presentation to you at this point in time.
Thanks, Larry. Good evening, Greg.
Good evening. Well, this is exciting, but now the work begins. A few things I want to hand out here. You have received all of these in one form or another, some digital, but I wanted you to have handouts. One is our 2015 annual report that you received in a digital newsletter. This was also given out at our annual meeting a week ago. And then a copy of a document that we put together that was in your packet that is a synopsis of services that we provided specifically to Gardner this last year, kind of an itemized based on the five priorities that we had brought up to you earlier this year. The other document is, I just wanted you to have a sample of work we did this year that is our membership application, and it shows the different benefits and investment levels. We raised those, which was a main reason that we were able to increase our private investment level considerably this year, which I'll talk about. What you didn't get in your packet was this PowerPoint, and it's very similar to the one I went through back over the summer, so I'm not going to dwell on it. There's a couple of things that I wanted to share with you in here, though. But what you did get that's a part of this is the metrics. You asked me to go back or even before we started, is that we needed to measure what we're doing, come back and feedback to you, and so we put those metrics together. Now, this plan and the presentation when originally given was for the budget for 2016 this year, but it's still the plan, and it's what we've been implementing so far this year, and so some of the results will be from this year so far. This is one of the things I wanted to talk about, this slide here. We were able to generate 13 new members this year. 15 of our members upgraded to higher investment levels, and those were all considerable upgrades. The private investment increase was 61%. I can tell you that as of yesterday, it is now 80% since January of last year. 2014, we had private investment of $64,000. 2015, 103, and our budget for this year is 116, and we will make that. Our operating expense increase was 34%. 2014, that was $254,000, and 2015, it was $340,000. So a $90,000 increase on the services that we could provide to our partners. Again, the scope of work hasn't changed. Prospect response activity is the primary thing that we do, and it really trumps everything else. And I can tell you that they seem to come in while we are out of town on a marketing trip, and they come in bunches. And January, earlier this year, we had 6 come in at one time, and 4 of those were due within 3 days. So like I say, we've got to stop everything else we're doing to get these done. RFIs can be anywhere from just sending a marketing piece on the property to a document that could be 30 to 40 pages with everything that they'd ever wanted to know about the property, the community, up to which way is the prevailing wind in August. So things like that. And again, the metrics are attached. Business retention, Krista Claus from our team is doing a great job with that. She has visited 5 companies, actually 4 companies, one of them twice, and I've been with her on 2 of those, and we will continue to do that. The outcomes have been, I think, just incredible. Now, obviously, the most business retention calls she's going to do, or we will do, are in New Century Air Center because we have 64 companies there, and we've worked out a funding mechanism with Colin McKee at the airport where his marketing budget will go to pay her for that. So we're not spreading it around the communities of Edgerton and Gardner that really don't have that many businesses to call on. And again, the metrics are in there, and we're in the measurements, and we're in your handout. Data management was something that was very important to me this year, and as I've expressed to you in the past, there were things that really needed to be fixed and needed to be fixed immediately. And starting with our website, we were able to capture an $11,000 grant from Kansas City Power and Light to help us with that, and it was done in I think June, and it is a state of the art. Still needs work, something we work on every day, but we think it is one of the best economic development websites in the region. The second thing that bothered me the most was we didn't have our sites and buildings in the database. And you can't call yourself an economic development firm if you don't have available properties listed in there, because that's where the consultants go, it's where KCADC goes, that's where the Kansas Department of Commerce goes to find what's available. So we were able to add 13 sites that weren't previously in there, and we continue to find available properties and keep those updated. Once they're sold, they got to come out, and as new one comes available, we get those in there as well. Probably the biggest challenge for me this year was updating our bylaws, and it wasn't something I planned on when I took the job. It's not something I enjoyed doing, but they were a mess as well. And the first thing that bothered me was that our executive committee was only the officers. They did not include our 3 biggest funders. It didn't include New Century Air Center, didn't include the city of Gardner, didn't include the city of Edgerton. And I didn't think that was right, neither did my executive committee. So one of the things that we added was that the mayor of Gardner will be on our executive committee. The mayor of Edgerton will be on there, as is the executive director of New Century Air Center. And I think that is very important for you. And that is how so the mayor, whoever it is, will be on our executive committee. As I mentioned, we revised the investment levels and benefits, which increased our private investment by 61% now up to 80%. And that's going to continue. Many of the companies that are members, which we have 103 of now, which is amazing for an economic development group this size, couldn't make changes because of their budget years. So they're just now able to plan that into their budget. So I think the response has just been tremendous. And they're coming from all parts of the Kansas City region. It's not just this area, Southwest Johnson County. It's people in the development world from all over. And it's really given us a very diverse, not only board of directors, but membership. And our last annual meeting, I think, was a good profile of that. We had, it was a great group of folks. And that comment came back to me over and over again. We've never seen this particular person at one of our events, or the president of KCADC had never attended one of our events, and the president of a certain development company that was there. So that shows what we have going on down here, and they've bought in and they're participating, and I think that's fantastic for us. On to business recruitment and marketing. Just a couple of things I wanted to mention here. And you can see the metrics again that we put in here, the way we'll measure us by. But we produced drone videos, and I had that in the plan to do in 2016. We were able to partner with Kansas City Power and Light, who helped us pay for those. We did one here in Gardner, we did one at New Century Air Center, and one out at Edgerton. And if you haven't seen it, it flies along the Coleman building, and it shows it shows not only the Midwest Commerce Center there, but it also shows the whole interchange, so you can see the retail opportunities. You can actually see onto the east side of New Century Air Center, and we've used it in every single RFI that we've answered so far, and we'll continue. It's a fantastic tool. That would have cost, if Gardner did that on their own, somewhere between $4,000 and $7,000. It cost me about $2,000, and Kansas City Power and Light paid the rest of it. And they didn't have to do that for Gardner. They are not the energy company here in Gardner, and they were kind enough to help us with that. Our Developers Expo, which Gardner participated in, was last October. It's something I've done for about 17 years. It's extremely valuable, I've found. We get fantastic results and surveys from our guests. It's the brokerage community, it's developers, it's corporate real estate folks. They come and spend a day. We have an expo in the morning. Gardner had a booth there. A few of you attended, and it goes all day, and it's a chance to build about 8 hours of relationships with people that are doing deals, and we'll continue to do that. If Gardner did that on their own, it cost about $26,000. Retail marketing, again, as we've talked about this before, International Council of Shopping Centers, I've been going for years and years. Now we have even more reason to go, and now we have things that I can show people, and we've already started working on that. I started making a list this afternoon of folks that, after I meet with Dan next week, he's gone this week. We talked briefly on Friday, Dan night from day 3. We're going to compare our list of targets, and I started making that list today, and Nick Pierce, the head of real estate for Target, Neil Hamilton, the director of operations for Lowe's, Dennis McIntyre from B&B Theaters, who's here in Kansas City actually, Lori Burns, director of operations for Darden Restaurants, which is the Longhorn Steakhouse and Olive Garden and Capitol Grill and others, a large restaurant holding company, Dave Bingham from Intercontinental Hotels, Jay Tibbetts from Gander Mountain, and then also, very importantly, I'll meet with the local tenant representatives in the brokerage community here in Kansas City, like David Block and Chuck Zug, who these guys represent a myriad of retailers or new retailers when they come to the market and help find their spaces. So, you know, we've had them out here for tours. We really couldn't show them anything. Now we can. Now we have solid data that we'll be continually emailing them, giving them tours, meeting with them, and then taking to meetings out in Las Vegas at ICSC when we go there. The funding that I wanted to show you what our other, what the Johnson County Airport Commission provides $67,500. They also have a marketing fund which is earmarked We do leverage that. It used to just go for a bunch of advertisements in different publications. We've totally revamped that, and we will leverage that to where it helps all of us. They also provide my office space and part-time assistant and all the utilities and phone and all that, the overhead as well. Gardner has done $35,000, that's what was in the budget for this year. Edgerton renewed at $35,000, and then as I showed, we will, private investors at $115,000 plus about another $60,000 in sponsorships that will come in as well. Now, what we'll do with the funding, and like I said, I like to reserve the right to be flexible for when opportunities arise, and obviously one has arisen, and so we'll be making some adjustments to what we do. But I want to increase Krista Claus and her business retention and communications to 20 hours a week. We'll be making a retail recruitment brochure that will be very targeted. Because we are Southwest Johnson County, it'll include everyone, and it'll do the strip down I-35 on both sides, but it will be, and we can customize it, so it'll have a very unique focus to the new development, and with all the data that goes in there as well. And that will be done by the middle of May, before we go to the International Council of Shopping Centers. We are establishing a workforce initiative task force. My new chairman is Karen Martley from Johnson County Community College. She is going to chair that. That will be a group from the local schools, from the secondary education, and then our HR people and plant managers. And what we've got to do is, I met with Unilever the other day. He's got 8 management engineering type jobs available right now that they haven't filled. So we've got to get, and then they've got 16 that are regular workforce on the line type jobs. So we've got to get our local school district that is training kids to go into these jobs, but then also we've got to get the people that, I call them headhunters, and there's firms that specialize in different industries. We've got to get them all at the table working together, not only provide me the information on what people are available to fill these jobs, or what we need to do to train them, and then have the HR people, plant managers, talking to these people in the same room, so that, and it's a challenge. It's the #1 issue for us on every project that comes in, and it's going to continue to, especially with some of the exciting things we have coming. Workforce is going to be the deal breaker for a lot of areas. And then fiber optic recruitment effort. I know you've heard this ad nauseum. It's an issue at New Century Air Center, especially for smaller companies that can't afford or can't wait for it to get there. And we are on the verge of losing a small engineering company because of a monthly cost from AT&T to provide that. We don't even have high-speed internet in my office, at least what I call high-speed. So we're going to partner with the city to, and I know it's an issue here in Gardner, that we can try to solve that this year. Another thing that we had planned on, and this may change based on the news, is having a national site consultant event here in Southwest Johnson County. They are these people drive the deals. And I've got good relationships with a lot of them, and what we need to do is get them here to see. I can go see them, and we do, at different events, go and do one-on-one meetings with them with KCADC, but we need to get them here to see what we have, and so we're going to work on that. We've got a proposal in front of us. We're looking at partnering with Kansas City Power and Light, Kansas City Area Development Council, and even possibly Olathe to help it be a doable thing for us this year. So that's still got a question mark. That may have to get put off a year based on the new information. And then, as always, I leverage KCADC, Kansas Department of Commerce, and Kansas City Power and Light. They've got way more money than we do, and so I piggyback with them. I've got a fantastic relationship with them, and we'll continue to do that. A couple of things in this document that I wanted to point out, the one that has the results. I went through some of it, but a few things that I want you to understand that as this region is successful, Gardner's successful. And you may or may not know that New Century Air Center buys their water, most of their water, from City of Gardner, and that has gone up drastically because of the expansions at Unilever and DuPont. We have four major food manufacturers, and another one, well, is about to announce an expansion, and another one is kind of looking at doing it. They are heavy water users, and because of that success there, brings success to Gardner in selling water. All these new jobs, we had 1,000 new jobs created here, $4 million, or $400 million, 400,000 square feet of new building, and over $400 million of investment in the last year. Now, Gardner is seeing the results in sales tax revenue from those people. We're seeing new building permits, and in fact, I think Gardner, told the mayor recently, I think Gardner is seeing some of the benefits before some of the others because of tax abatement. There's no tax abatement on sales tax. If you go into Austin just about any day, you'll see just about an entire room full of folks from New Century Air Center and some from even out of the country that are here working. And then the Walmart TIF comes off this year, so that's going to add an additional sales tax. Tom Mertz was added to our, he's the TradeNet Publishing was elected to our board, and we're very excited about that. Ed York is here with me tonight. Ed's in the back there. He is with Arvest Bank, is now, not only did they increase their membership level with us, but he is now on our board of directors. And then Jason Camus with the Chamber is here, and he's an ex officio member of our board. I am participating in Gardner's Economic Development Advisory Committee. And I think that some of the numbers that I talked about with private investment are down there on the bottom of the right page. And then the very back is the marketing plan that we have for this year. And I mean, it's aggressive. There are a lot of things on there, but there's some things I'm going to change because of the new, there'll be more retail put in there. We'll go to ICSC in Chicago, but probably New York, and invite any of you that want to go along with us on those meetings to go as well. So lastly, I want to just talk a little bit about the value that we provide, and it's, you know, I shared with you some of the dollar figures that we try to equate to some of the things we do, but the things that are subjective that you really can't put a dollar amount to. And I think that's one of those is my relationship with the Kansas City Area Development Council, and we go back over 25 years. I know every one of their staff people, and not only professionally but personally as well. They have so many deals and so many people to work with that they've got to know and trust when they've got an important deal that we can get it done for them, and we do that. Krista Claus is, as you all know, she's the business editor on 98.1 every single morning on the radio. When we have a newsworthy announcement, even if it may not be what the regular news outlets would run, she runs it. And you can't put a dollar amount to that she does, and especially with what we got coming up. My experience responding to RFIs and deals like Harley-Davidson, Kubota, Citicorp, Bank of America, and the list goes on and on over 20 years, when the deals come to us, you can be comfortable that you've got the guy that knows how to get them done right and can get the deals done eventually, and there is a value to that. The quality of attendees at the meetings that we had, our relaunch in the summer, our annual meeting, and our Developers Expo, I think is a direct reflection on the professionalism and the experience of the staff you had. Like I told you earlier, the attendance was fantastic, record numbers, and that's going to continue, and I think that's a reflection on us. The social media, which you can see a lot of the details of that in this document, between Krista and I, it's very difficult to put a dollar amount on that, and we are very active when we do that, and just about everything gets on there, and it's, you see about 1 in 3 is Gardner focused. Business retention calls, I mentioned, and with that, I'm going to stop and open it up to questions. I know I've covered a lot.
Well, I would say right there, we're going to ask for public comments regarding new business item number 2. Anybody has public comment? That would be your opportunity. We've got someone coming forward.
Randy Gregorczyk, 620 East Hawthorne, Gardner, Kansas. First, I want to start off with a real positive thing. I want to applaud each council member, Moore, Harrison, Shute, Winters, and Mr. Councilman Melton, and of course our mayor for the great win out on the east side of 35. I think that's awesome, and I commend each and every one of you, as well as city staff and the volunteers that have helped in the previous years with committees and so forth. So I commend you guys. I have a couple of questions for you regarding the Southwest Johnson County EDC. The first question I have is, have you realized the return on your investment in 2015 and 2016? The next question is, what support did you receive from the Southwest Johnson County on the recent win with Day 3 LLC? And then after that recent win, and I mean this in a humble way, because one win doesn't mean you're going to continue to win. But after this recent win, what is your confidence or comfort level with respect to self-performing economic development on behalf of Gardner, while keeping a reduced level relationship with Southwest Johnson County EDC, which might be compensatory to the contribution that you make to Southwest Johnson County EDC? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy. Other comments? No one coming forward? Questions for Greg?
May I?
Yes.
Greg, can you answer his question about how much input you had on this Day 3 LLC thing?
Yeah, I met with him, with Dan Knight approximately, I didn't have business cards yet, so it was earlier this year. And
how much input did you have with helping us land that deal?
Well, I think it was a discussion. I don't want to say it was, there wasn't that much that I could do other than offer support. And once the deal was done, we talked about sewers and how they were going to get there, and could sewers run across from New Century Air Center, and which the answer was no. And so it was what avenue should he take to try to get this done? And originally he just wanted to build a big warehouse, and I told him that that's not our vision. And specifically, even once you got the sewers over there, then the property is so much more valuable than what distribution centers are. So that was it. He and I talked the night we were here. We met the next morning, and he's gone this week, and we're meeting next week. Then that was when I do the work. It's really when, it's trying to, the hard work has yet to be done.
I can tell you from my perspective, I think Council President Shute and myself probably had more to do with that landing and making Dan Knight feel warm and loved than anything you might have done, because...
Oh, I'm not saying that,
I'm just...
yeah, I'm not...
So that's, to
doubting it,
Randy's question,
absolutely.
from my perspective, one of my first questions is what would we get for our money, which I saw a lot of different stuff. Last year wasn't for giving any money to the EDC. I did get an email on 10/2/15 that you sent out labeled social media, which you put in there that is $1,000 you had spent to get to 365 likes on social media, and about the time we talked in May, or I think it was May last year, you had 90 likes. So that's 275 likes. That's $3.60 a like you're paying for people to like stuff on social media. You like your page. And I just don't see that as a good use of funds, for one. I did have another thing on the, I got a printout here for the rest of the council. On the community profiles page, on your website, who does the bios on there?
Probably, I'm not sure, Krista or Candid Communications.
Because I looked at it, I wanted to see exactly what we were getting for our money. And if you look at Edgerton, let's say, it has a whole lot of very nice detail about where they're at and the railway and all the other stuff. I mean, and it's, there's a lot of very nice information. Same thing with Johnson County Airport, or the New Century. There's a whole bunch about different things that are really beneficial that would make me very interested. And then you look at Gardner, and it says almost nothing. I mean, it doesn't say, by the way, we're right next to or in between these two, or, you know, it doesn't reference any of that stuff at all that's referenced in the other two, which is exactly the same information. So I'm sitting here wondering, why am I paying the same as Edgerton? If I'm a business owner, I'm looking at it from that perspective. Well, why am I paying what they're paying when they're getting? And I know you had a banner year with 800 new jobs in Edgerton. And yes, we'll get overflow from that, but do we get anything from you at all from stuff that might be even close to the logistics park? Because I drove like the Kubota deal. It's 0.2 of a mile from that Kubota place to our city, you know, the boundary. And yet, I don't know, have we gotten anything from anybody about a potential lead that might offer something for Gardner in the last year?
Yes, and those are listed in, but they weren't for out there, they were for next door to Coleman. That's the only thing that we have had really to offer on the deals that have come in. And I don't know how many are here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and I'm working on one right now. But most everything that we're getting, they're looking for buildings. And that's why North Point has been so successful.
Right.
Because they're building spec buildings.
I understand.
We don't have any spec buildings.
So,
and on the social media, the Facebook page, we're not spending that to get like, we're boosting stories. And as it says in the handout, the stories about Gardner that are going viral, because we're spending that money to boost them, and I know you understand that, and because of that, people like our page. We're not doing it to get likes. It's to get the word out.
I understand. And I just have a whole thing about Facebook marketing, because, I mean, there's nobody out there who's got millions of dollars probably looking at Facebook going, I think I'll just go drop millions of dollars in four ads.
And we're not spending much.
Right.
I mean, that's a cheap way to get messages out.
So the other thing, when on your page, the reference, the EDC service pages, I looked at that, and it had different areas of land that's available in our area. When you get questions about that land, do you send that over to city staff, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep,
So
and the RFIs.
how many of those have we gotten this year?
Well, they usually get them from the same, we get the leads from KCADC, and I respond to them on behalf of the city.
Right, I mean, so the ones, if they go to your website and they click on something and ask for information, then it goes to...
We haven't gotten any.
You haven't gotten any?
No.
Okay, so that's, okay.
And that's typical for economic development websites. When we talk to consultants, they're telling us now that they don't go to our websites.
Right, well, I think I talked about that last year too, because, I mean, that's a nice website, but, you know,
But you
I
gotta have
asked
them.
about traffic last year, and you couldn't give me any details because there really is not any, because nobody runs out and looks at that stuff.
And we're not gonna spend money trying to drive people.
Right. The other thing is, and this is one thing that kind of really upset me, I look at the numbers all the time, and I'm sure there's council members do too, but I noticed that for the big expo thing you had, okay, we were donating, we gave you guys $35,000, and we still had to pay for a booth?
No.
At your expo?
No, you didn't.
I thought there was a bill in there for like $110 or something,
Oh, I
some
think-
badges, or, because I specifically asked about it, and it was a fee for...
I think it was the reception at the end of the day.
Okay. So,
We only we covered the cost of those items that they paid for because they had meal associated items.
Okay.
So we paid for those items.
all right. So let's see, I think, I think that's it. I mean, to me, here's my honest opinion, is whether we give Southwest Johnson County EDC money or not, we're still gonna get the benefit of being right next to these two places, and people are gonna come here and eat and buy houses and everything else without spending $35,000. And we can do things on our own, even as council members or the mayor, and facilitate leads to get businesses here. That's just me personally. So, I'll let you guys do the rest. Yeah, you go.
Well, I guess, and I don't know if Mr. York would want to come up and speak or not, but You know what, one of the things that I'm interested in is, first of all, I like that public investment, or private investment, I'm sorry, has been increased. And to me, that's one thing that we need to keep in consideration, is that we're getting about $175,000 worth of private investment that nobody's gonna write a check to the city and say, we're gonna give you $10,000 to help with this. So there is a benefit there. I guess my question, Greg Moore, is as that continues to increase, maybe I shouldn't expect this, but I would expect that the public portion would potentially start to decrease. And so that's where I am, is you're increasing your funding from private entities, but we're virtually remaining flat. And I get the city, I would assume private investors want to say, hey, the city has a stake in this, I believe this. I guess I'm just questioning to what is my thought. And I don't know, like I said, if somebody who invests in it would want to speak to that, or if you can speak to that, or Larry, if you have an opinion on that,
Can I add to that a little bit? Because I had the exact same question. But the thing I was going to ask is there a point whereby public funding can be reduced, or do you see that the public investment ever decreasing at all because of the increase in public fund or private funding? Is that what you were getting at?
Yeah, exactly. That's, yeah.
That traditionally doesn't happen. I've never, and it's usually, it goes up. And Gardner and Edgerton are already, you know, I've worked in a number of communities, and I know all the economic development people, and we are competing with communities that are getting six figures for economic development. And I get this question often from, it's just the opposite from our private investors. Is the city really, they say economic development's the most important thing to us, but they're only giving you $35,000? That's what I'm hearing. And so they don't think you're bought in, frankly. And that's just, yeah, that could happen. But I think if we see the city's financial investment going down, that we'll see the private investment follow it down as well.
I think when it gets to...
Mr. York?
Sure, he can. Yeah, Ed, if you've got something to add, you can come up. I do want to say that there's some orders of magnitude here. When you know, cities our size, cities smaller than us, cities even up to the size of Lenexa or Shawnee, I mean, those are cities that are generally contributing, like Greg's saying, in the six-figure range and into the six-figure range. On the flip side, when you get to the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce, or the Overland Park Chamber of Commerce, or the Olathe Chamber of Commerce, you get to that order of magnitude. I think and Jason's here too, and my guess is maybe one of you guys knows, but I'm pretty sure that that's when you start getting the kind of participation that they get at their chambers, and the chambers and the EDCs are running together, that's when I think the investment shrinks back down on the city level, maybe a little bit. But some of them, I think, might even not get money from the cities, and it's all funded by the private investment. But is that?
I'm not aware of any that are not funded.
Jason's not either.
Yeah,
But
not many. I mean, for the most part, I think Greg hit it on the head. For the most part, they're going to go up, because as opportunities, as another opportunity arises, there's more opportunities to go out and recruit additional businesses to come here, and then to fill those jobs, and then to build housing to go with it, and that type of thing. So, you know, obviously I think any Chamber of Commerce or Economic Development Corporation would typically try to continue to increase the private investment as well, though, because we obviously want those funds to be a part of it, and I think they see that as a partnership. And the one thing I'll add is that and Ed can probably attest to this, but I hear it, I've heard it before, that, you know, local businesses aren't gonna give, if the city was ever to pull their funding from, in this case, the EDC, or reduce it, you're not, or decide that we just wanna do it ourselves, you're gonna lose the private investment piece, because you all, many of you have businesses, your companies don't wanna write a check to the city government, for anything extra than what they have to, so I think this is where they see it as, I think businesses, and Tom Mertz would be a perfect example, he sees it as a true partnership between the city and the private sector to bring additional jobs, when he knows, frankly, we could be bringing his competitor here. And he's okay with that, because he knows that's good for the greater, it's for the greater good, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Actually,
I'll just tell you from a private investor's standpoint, my name's Ed York, and I'm the market president here in Gardner and in Ottawa. 43 years of banking experience, so I've seen a lot of things happen in EDCs. I went to the management of Arvest Bank and asked them to increase the investment in the Southwest Johnson County EDC from $500 to $5,000 last year, and it is the single largest EDC expense we have in the 17 communities in the greater Kansas City area that we serve. And the argument that I made is because there's something unusual happening in Southwest Johnson County. And it has to do with the people who are in management and leadership positions now. It has to do with the mayor of Edgerton. It has to do with the mayor of Gardner. It has to do with a new young man who is running the New Century Airport, if you just a brand new young man. It has to do with a new city manager. It has to do with a new business development person. It has to do with a very well-experienced group of people. For the first time, there is no, the dysfunction that has happened in this very closed community of different communities trying to do everything themselves are all starting to work together. And in order to do that, you may think you can make the deals privately on yourself behind closed doors, but the sunshine laws will just break you up as quickly as possible, where you have a buffer when you're looking at major industrial, can work out a deal before it's all public and it can get screwed up by another community or another investor. You absolutely need, private business do not trust city management or city government. When you're trying to do a deal, you want to talk to someone who's on your side, they'll come and represent you. And for me as a private banker, I've watched our bank in Gardner flat as a pancake. And it's time for the banks and the private investors to step up with you, and we all work together, because this is the most incredible opportunity, and your signing tonight is a perfect example, and Grow is a perfect example. That relationship building, whether it be on a golf course or if it be a coffee shop, it's people doing business with people and who have relationships that $35,000 is invaluable to you.
Thanks, Ed.
thank you, Ed.
Thank you.
I'm gonna ask one question
Sure,
here
not a
really
problem.
quick. I was looking at the Leadership Council information. I noticed that Van Trust is on there. They weren't on there before, were they?
No, they are a new
Were they,
member.
are they new members this
Yes,
year?
new member.
Okay, and they came in at the gold level?
Yeah.
That's, I've got another question, but I'm gonna
Sure.
yield the next one to Council President.
That's fine. Yeah, I think one of the things that, and I know that we're now at the point now where we can actually start looking at selling pads. I mean, that's one of the biggest issues that we've had over the last several years. We do have pad sites within the community.
Yes.
Particularly ones that are, in areas that haven't been moving very much, and I'm assuming you know those areas. The area near New Century Fieldhouse, some of the areas out west towards the airport, a couple of other areas over by a Walmart tip district, and so I don't know if you've ever gotten leads for those particular areas or not, or yeah, you know, there's some infill that definitely has to happen in addition to our new stuff. I only want to, you know, focus on the shiny stuff because that's new and it's, you know, it's exciting. But a lot of that infill stuff is stuff that we've got to address, and maybe when we talk to, I put on here site selectors in like four stars here, and we've really got to start reaching out to site selectors and selling them not only on what we're bringing, what we're going to have, but also what we already have. And I don't know, and that's something I think that we've not, maybe the city of Gardner hasn't done a great job in giving you the tools to do that, but now that we're looking at potentially a partnership that I would like to see that working. The second thing is, that I was looking at is, you know, we already have a relationship with KCADC.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're saying that you're getting leads from KCADC and then you're following up with them and then presenting, we're getting, you know, a significant amount of services for our $10,000 for KCADC. And I'm assuming, and Cheryl, correct me if I'm wrong here, I'm assuming that we reached out and joined the KCADC because we wanted to leverage their services directly. Is that correct?
Right, we, you know, thought it would be an opportunity for us to work with them. We have a relationship, and we work sometimes directly with them. We work jointly. When we worked on the Economic Development Symposium, we worked jointly with Southwest Johnson County EDC. Brandon, we reached out to KCAC.
Okay.
And I want to weigh in on that as well, because I reached out to Cheryl about joining KCADC before Greg came on board here.
Yeah.
At the time, we weren't being marketed as aggressively by Greg's predecessor, and I thought we needed to have, you know, another source, another, you know,
Sure.
pipeline
Yep.
coming into Gardner, besides just organically and what we were getting from the Southwest Johnson County EDC.
Okay.
The fact that we've been able to leverage the relationship with KCADC actually probably has more to do with Cheryl's ability to do relationship building with the folks over there. But you know, one of the things that KCADC brings a deal in, if they go through Greg, we avoid having to put these people in a position. When he opens a file and it's, you know, Operation Falcon, then the potential developer still has anonymity. If KCADC brings it to us and it's, you know, XYZ Inc.,
Yeah.
then it's a matter of public record in pretty short order thereafter. It's absolutely right. There's a reason that we've got something between us and KCADC, and KCADC services 18 counties.
They do.
Yeah, the fact that they call 18 counties the greater Kansas City metro area kind of floors me still. However, that's
a much greater Kansas City area.
Yeah, so, I mean, yes, we've gotten good service from them, but that had a whole lot more to do with the kind of relationship that Cheryl in particular was able to build with the director level staff over there.
Yeah, I mean, here's what it comes down to me, okay? I'm gonna use a fishing analogy. I love pipelines, but I also love fishing. You know, if you wanna catch more fish, you drop a second hook. If you want to catch a whole bunch of fish, you cast a net. And there's many other analogies that go beyond that, but, you know, industrial fish companies will take multiple boats and cast a whole network of nets to trawl through the water and grab a whole lot of fish. And we're in the position now where we've now got some hooks and we've got some bait. I don't know if pulling a hook out of the water, even if it hasn't had bait on it in the past, is necessarily a smart move. And I completely understand the you know, financial situation, the $35,000 that we're talking about here. But if we don't if we pull the hook out of the water, then there's probably a chance that a fish that we want is not gonna come.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I'm at on this one. Even if we haven't had, a lot of this has to do with the fact that we haven't put baits on the hook. Okay?
We haven't been in a position to.
Exactly, so, and I know,
I think we used a similar analogy last year with a different thing.
No, what I'm saying is that, all right, Rich, if we pull 35,000 from Southwest Johnson County EDC.
Right.
Where would you put it?
Well, we can just give it back to the people or let it sit there.
So we're pulling the hook out of the water.
So that's.
Look,
yeah,
I've already spoken my piece,
Yeah.
I'm just.
No, but you're.
Last year, you said the same thing if you watch the video. You said, well, I don't think we should pull it out quite yet,
Can
you
I ask
know.
some
All right,
questions?
yeah, sure,
Um,
absolutely. I'll be willing to take the hits on this one.
First off, I wanted to thank Mr. York, because I think his explanation was probably the clearest one I've
Mhm.
heard in the last several years on why investing in EDC is a good idea, and I can subscribe to the notion that we have a confluence of really awesome things that are happening in this area right now, and we have our first big development to show for that on the other side of I-35. That's a really, really big step, and to pull back and from that, from our previous investments, and to Mr. Gregorcik's question, the ROI on for the last 2 years. I was asking the same question a year ago.
Yep.
What's the ROI? What have we seen? So I can sympathize with that line of thinking, but I understand now there's a certain amount of optics involved here that we have to show commitment to business for business to come and invest, and if we pull out of Johnson County EDC, Southwest Johnson County EDC, it would send a really, really negative message about where we're headed in the future. So while there's no direct tangible ROI that we can point to and say, for the last $35,000, Greg performed these services and those services are worth X amount. While we can't do that, and that would be something that would give me a real warm fuzzy if we could. I can see value in continuing the investment and continuing to push forward, because we've got to get we've got our foothold over there. We've got to expand on the other side of I-35, and the only way forward to do that, in my opinion, is to continue our investment in economic development, and that's my take on it. And one question I have for Greg is I get this question over and over and over again about fiber optic infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so if there's something that you could do for the city of Gardner, I think going forward in the next year or so, it would be to you leverage your relationships with the ADC and others to see about how we get fiber optics infrastructure into the city of Gardner, whether that be CenturyLink. Shout out to my.
I know, I've been looking at her the whole.
Yeah,
or
because it's not her area.
Or Google. It doesn't really matter. I think it's just universal. Most people understand the path forward in terms of attracting the skilled workers and the folks that we want to bring into the city of Gardner and continue to grow. Those are the types of things that they demand. I mean,
Yes.
In addition to a really cool golf course and free fireworks.
I will absolutely agree with you, and I will say this: if Greg Martin and Southwest Johnson County EDC can do that, that is invaluable. That is absolutely invaluable. That would, by that one move, validate the investment that we've made.
I just want to, this was kind of my point last year, that some of these things are difficult to quantify. I mean, a lot of it is, I think, and to measure what we're getting back exactly for our money, some of it's just laying groundwork, some of it's connections. A lot of those things are difficult to actually quantify. So, and I think especially with where we're headed and the type of development we're headed for, I think that's actually kind of right up your alley. You know, it's not the big industrial buildings, it's the smaller stuff, the shopping centers, the retail, those kind of things. I think that's where your connections, and I think that fits your wheelhouse pretty well, so.
I'll just add two quick things, and I'll speak specifically. So I do know both Greg and Cheryl and Larry were instrumental in a meeting, in input that was provided to a meeting that was held last week regarding potentials for fiber optic. And I'm not going to get into a lot of detail because there's somebody else that will be working on that. But there was some key feedback both from potential customers that I think will be critical going forward. And then the other thing, when we talk about workforce initiative, to me, to be honest with you, I think that's one of the key things that we can do. I can tell you as personally, the difficulty trying to fill jobs at certain levels. And the fact is, I think a lot of companies are very, if I can't fill them here, there's some other market where we can. And so that, to me, is one of the absolute key things that the EDC can help us with in providing resources, because it is a absolute struggle.
And one of the things we do when we bring in prospects is have them meet with you at the business one-on-one, and Mr. Kubota will talk to you, how is CenturyLink doing with hiring people? And if you say, we can't get anybody, they're not coming. Simple as that. So if our existing businesses aren't happy with their labor force, we're not getting new ones in. So you're exactly right.
I have just a couple of things. I mean, I went to the $110 of the Developers Expo. It probably was paying for me to go and have a couple of drinks with somebody or something like that. But here's the thing. That Developer Expo was like a who's who of development people in the greater Kansas City metro. I mean, probably the highest profile development firm in the city is Block Real Estate. And I mean, I was almost accosted by a steady stream of director level and vice presidents coming by. Larry was there, so was Jeannie and Cheryl. And can we put together, if we wanted to self-perform an event like that? Sure, but it's going to cost a lot of money. Can we self-perform some of this stuff? Yes, but we're going to have to hire somebody to do it. And even then, I mean, if we wanted to start to undertake a workforce initiative, then it's probably going to be another person getting hired in with a certain skill set that's probably going to cost us X amount of money. And then there is the recruiting aspect, there's the outreach aspect that's involved in talking to people about resource process outsourcing and insourcing that, I mean, it's all going to cost money. It's, if we don't have a relationship with the EDC like this, you know, that's going to cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars to self-perform the same stuff. For now, and eventually, you know, this is all, once it starts bearing fruit, and I think that's what we're all hoping for, then I think we're really going to see the value. And it's, if we land another hotel or two, we're probably going to be gladly giving them a little bit more money when they ask for it. But yeah, you know, we've got some stuff lighting up in the wind column. We get a couple more, we're probably going to be there, especially if the EDC has something to do with it. So. I see you smiling, Ed. That all makes sense to you? Okay. Anybody else? Greg, thank you. Thanks for coming.
For your time.
For coming here and leaning into it, man. So, any other further comments? Because if not, I mean, I would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion Harrison, second Winters. that we approve the agreement with the Southwest Johnson County Economic Development Corporation for 2016 in the amount of $35,000 and authorize the mayor to sign an agreement. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
No.
Any abstention? New business item number 2 passes. He was doing his best, Larry Fudovich, you know. New business item number 3, and somehow we lost our biggest proponent of new business item number 3.
All right, let's go.
Right as it was coming.
I apologize if I talk really fast. I'm gonna try to get this done before Councilman Melton gets back.
Oh, all right. So we're considering the fireworks ordinance. Chief, good evening. Talk fast.
Thank you. On February 1st, I presented information to council relevant to your consideration for repealing the ban on the use and sale of fireworks within the city limits of Gardner. One of the reasons I presented for keeping the fireworks being in place was the noise associated with their use and the impact it had on our residents' quality of life, particularly those individuals with PTSD and autism. When consideration of repealing the ordinance was tabled for further discussion, the mayor asked that I identify individuals who could speak to that issue, and I have those speakers here tonight. I didn't have to go very far to find the first speaker. It's Gardner Police Officer Nick Wright, who can speak to the impact that fireworks can have on individuals with PTSD. Officer Wright is a former member of the Air Force and served in Iraq during the Iraq War. Nick?
Thanks, Chief. Hey, Wright,
How you doing?
Good.
Kind of ad-lib all this, so I'm not an expert on PTSD. I have my experiences from over there and talking with the VA groups in Kansas City. My experience over there was with the 447th Air Expeditionary Group in combat crash rescue. I was also augmented with the U.S. Army's 1st Armored Division. I spent 6 months over there. All of it was in Baghdad. It's kind of a new warfare compared to like World War II, Vietnam and stuff, because it's more of a guerrilla type warfare. With my experiences in Baghdad, you know, we had the constant, you know, bangs, booms, all from mortars, rockets, what have you, a lot of small arms stuff. And one thing that I found with a lot of groups I've talked to and stuff, it kind of affected me a little bit too, was on a hot night in Gardner, when you have all the explosions going on in fireworks, when you have the smell of the gunpowder, sulfur in the air and stuff, you know, it can kind of take you back. Some years are better than others, some are not. But talking to a lot of the veterans in the groups I've talked to, it's kind of a double-edged sword. You know, they had their issues with the fireworks, but at the same time, as veterans in the military, they want people to appreciate it and go out and celebrate. That being said, you know, I don't know how many people in Gardner are Iraqi or Afghanistan veterans. VA's targeted a lot of Iraqi freedom veterans for this, for PTSD associated with this kind of stuff because of the urban environment. And like I said, it's a new type of warfare. Some of the things I have here, I don't have a PowerPoint, and I do apologize. Some of the figures I have here from the Department of Veterans Affairs, 10 to 18% of the about roughly 1 million veterans who came back over the last, 12, 13 years, they're the ones who have experienced PTSD. And a lot of them have operated in a combat environment, as well as among those 18%, the VA has also targeted during studies people of lower rank, people who experienced traumatic brain injuries from IEDs, gun problems, as well as members of the National Guard and Reserves. That's what I did when I was over there. This was a war that was 50% roughly of reservists, which is pretty unheard of. But we also didn't have a draft. On the other side of it, for combat PTSD, you know, fireworks isn't the only association. You know, even a bag of trash on the side of the road can trigger for a lot of guys, because it looks like, you know, those were IEDs were hidden in those. So, you know, fireworks does play part of it, but it also depends on the individual. For me, it's a minor thing. I'm more on point, I'm more alert and everything like that. For people who have severe, it can be hallucinations to actual medical issues. But like I said, fireworks is a part of it, but it's not all of it. That's about it.
Thanks.
Thanks, Nick. Do you mind hanging around in case we have questions here after a little bit?
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
My next speaker is Jennifer Smith. Jennifer is a lifelong resident of Gardner, and she's the Executive Director of the Heartland Autism Society.
I need a ladder.
Sorry. My dad's fault, I'm short. Anyway. All right, my name is Jennifer Smith, born and raised in Gardner and still a current resident with my adult children, Corinne and Cameron, both who have autism. I'm also the Executive Director for the Autism Society of the Heartland, which represents over 15,000 families in the Kansas City metro. Thank you for this opportunity to inform the City Council of those with autism and sensory processing disorder. This also can include those with Down syndrome and those prone to seizures. We appreciate you including us in our community in re-examining the fireworks ordinance. First and foremost, the ordinance was established for the safety of the citizens of Gardner. I remember my parents live on Main Street, and my dad still lives there. Growing up, we would get in trouble for shooting off bottle rockets. And I was a young child, and so that still resonates in today's society where we have to be careful. We also, at that time growing up, where we burned trash in Gardner, and of course you cannot do that. We had to, some of you were looking at me like, what? You could burn trash in Gardner? Yeah, we had burn barrels because we didn't have that many people in Gardner. Anyway, first and foremost, the ordinance was established for the safety of the citizens of Gardner. Currently, there are some citizens that do not follow the ordinance that is in place. I, for one, have called the police several times through the years reporting neighbors, and the officers come by, and if they do not see the person shooting off the fireworks, they cannot ticket them. So the cycle continues all night long. I honestly wanted to bring a bullhorn here tonight to randomly shoot off to give you an example of what an individual with sensory issues might feel when fireworks are being shot off. But out of respect to our veterans and some individuals in the audience with sensory issues, I chose not to, so I would not cause undue anxiety. But I wanted to give you a real feeling of what someone might experience in just 5-minute time frame when fireworks are being shut off. So do you understand? I wanted to get a bullhorn and just randomly shoot it off so you would understand someone that has a sensory issue that doesn't know when the next sound is going to come, and it's just going to be a barrage of sounds over and over and over. Autism is a neurological disorder. 1 out of 45 children are diagnosed. That number is going to change in the next couple of weeks when the CDC is going to come out with new findings. 1% of the population now has autism. Autism can affect the body in many different ways, including sensory to sounds, light, and smells. One of the highest anxiety events is 4th of July. Individuals and families sometimes for days experience anxiety when fireworks are being shot off. Concerns of how loud they're going to be. For example, when an M80 goes off and how it's going to make the house shake, how long the process is going to be going on, days and hours of constant shots being fired, and sometimes the smell of fireworks lingering in the air. My children put on headphones and focus on their movies. But we have a whole plan established to keep peace in our home. But when someone shoots off an M80 and the whole house shakes, then it becomes a meltdown time. When someone in our house, if our house is being shot at, or if something is going to explode. I'm also sure some folks without loved ones with disabilities might feel the same way. especially after the Royals won, but, you know, it was a different thing. An individual with autism and sensory issues can experience GI issues as well from the anxiety. Sometimes they cannot go to sleep. They're pacing and holding the ears so scared they bolt from home and run. And this could cause a wandering situation, which we now have 49% of children with autism and adults wander. And that's another issue that we have to deal with. Some individuals may even experience seizures due to lights and noises if they are that sensitive. For example, a family in the backyard having a family dinner. A neighbor starts shooting off fireworks or bottle rockets. Yes, those are very illegal, but they're still shoot them off. And your son starts screaming, holding his ears, yelling and crying and running all over the backyard. You then rush in the home and you have to close up all the doors, windows, and do everything you can to quiet and relax your son. Once you do, then boom, it happens again. Fireworks start back up. That was in 2001 for me, and every year after. I've basically had to become a prisoner in my own home with my now 21-year-old son and 22-year-old daughter, as we prepare for 2 to 3 days of fireworks that are illegal. So what would it be like if they were legal? I'm not the only family that experiences this. We have over 1,000 students in USD 231 that receive special services from the Special Education Department. We also have a growing number of students in our Gardner Gold program as well. If you think of 1,000 students with disabilities, that makes up over 2 elementary schools. 2 elementary schools full of individuals with special needs. And then we start shooting out fireworks. Just think about that. I can share with you documents here. I'm just kind of showing you some. We, as an organization, prepare our families for this event. Just because we know it happens, we have to also prepare our families for that day of what it's going to be like. They're called social stories, and how to prepare for sounds, lights, and crowds. There are many individuals that do like to watch the fireworks, and they are in a controlled area with systems in place, like noise-canceling headphones, watching from a car, and can leave if that individual gets anxious. We go through how to prepare for going to Celebration Park. I have written social stories for families to go to Celebration Park, but that is a choice for a family to go to. They do not have a choice in their own home. It is their property as well and should not have the experience the sounds of the fireworks illegally by a neighbor being shot off. It is a noise violation and could be a safety issue if the weather is dry and windy conditions. I know the city is looking at opportunities to bring in revenue, and that's quite evident before this process tonight. There are other opportunities that the city could get funding 365 days out of the year. I did also call my insurance agent and asked about my homeowner's insurance if it could get affected. He did say, as it stands, it would not go up, but it could go up if fireworks were allowed to be sold and shot off in the city. So then your citizens' homeowner's insurance could go up as well. I'm a co-executive producer for the Emmy Award-winning film Just Like You, Autism. And I do have an actual Emmy with my name on it. This film shares exactly what I just talked about with the sensory issues of a person with autism. After this session, I will be emailing you the film. It's about 20 minutes long, and you can watch it and also learn more about autism and some of those sensory issues. I do understand that citizens want to have fun and celebrate, and I hope that the City Council can come to a conclusion that can provide a safe experience without causing harm. I do also hope that if this ordinance stays as is, that the citizens do not put blame on those citizens with special needs, sensory issues, or veterans just because it did not get reversed. Once again, it is a safety issue first. And because one person's celebration could be another individual's agony. Thank you.
Jennifer, thank you. If you don't mind hanging around in case
Sure.
anyone has questions, or you might want to interject yourself, so.
You know me too well, Nick.
We may have met. So, Chief, was there?
All right. As directed by council, I worked with staff to develop a proposed ordinance allowing for the sale and use of fireworks for your consideration. There are 3 key decision points that I've highlighted within the ordinance that would determine the extent to which the sale and use of fireworks within the city would be allowed if the council decides to repeal the current ban. Date and time restrictions on the sale and use, zoning restrictions for the sale locations, and the permitting process. Date and time restrictions for the discharge of fireworks are under Section B1A. Using our neighboring jurisdictions as a point of reference, Edgerton allows the use of fireworks on July 3rd from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. and on July 4th from 10 a.m. to midnight. In Spring Hill, they are allowed from July 1st through July 5th from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m. If the ban is repealed, staff recommends limiting the discharge to July 3rd and 4th from 10 a.m. to no later than midnight. Date and time restrictions for the sale of fireworks are under Section C2. The sales period allowed under state statute is from June 27th through July 5th. Again, using our neighboring jurisdictions as a reference, Spring Hill follows those guidelines, allowing sales on those dates from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m., while Edgerton allows sales from from June 27th only through July 4th and from 8 a.m. to midnight. You'll notice that I've got June 27th marked out on the copy that you have. There's a provision in our current city code that limits the time for short-term special use permits to 7 days, which is why I have that marked out. A change to allow for a longer permit period would require posting the information, going to the Planning Commission for their review and recommendation, which would require direction from council. Zoning restrictions for the sale of fireworks are under Section C4. In accordance with existing city code, the recommendation is to limit sales to properties zoned as A, C1, C2, C3, and M1 and M2. The permitting process is outlined in Section D. Application fees vary across the county, with some jurisdictions waiving the fee for charitable organizations. Edgerton charges $500 per location, and Spring Hill is $1,000. The staff recommendation is for $1,000 per location. The time frame for accepting applications is also an area of consideration. With the urgency expressed by some of the vendors here at the last meeting, we thought that the first business day of the year was an appropriate time to start taking applications. The recommended ordinance also has a commercial general liability coverage minimum of $1 million. If council decides to repeal the fireworks ban, there are also a couple minor revisions to the ordinance that you have in front of you. In Section B, under discharge of discharge of fireworks, 2A and B, the references to the police department would need to be changed to the Business and Economic Development Department. And we also got some late feedback by the city's current pyrotechnician on some concerns that he had relevant to the provisions for display fireworks, governing both the disposal of unfired fireworks and those addressing close proximity fireworks. To address the issue with the unfired fireworks, City Attorney Dink recommended removing the word promptly from Section B2K, and then we did not have time to gather the reference material for the close proximity fireworks. It's part of a national code. We did not have that reference book, so we may have to come back to council if you repeal the ordinance with some minor revisions. As I noted in my last presentation, there is no public safety interest that is served by repealing the ban. The staff recommends keeping the current regulations which ban the discharge and sale of fireworks within the city limits.
Chief, thanks for that. We're going to open the floor for public comments. Anyone wishing to make public comments regarding new business item number 3? Now would be the opportunity. Please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and be heard.
My name is Ryan Beasley. I live at 610 South Plum Creek Drive here in Gardner. I did not expect to come here and talk about this tonight. But as far as my thoughts about the fireworks, I understand, and with all due respect to PTSD, veterans, people with autism, I don't disregard that at all when I asked that, get the opportunity to light up fireworks on the 4th of July and even sell them here in Gardner. I know there is quite a few people who would love the opportunity to do so. And if we aren't allowed, so we moved here 12 years ago, and where I came from, we did not have the ability to light off fireworks at the time. And so when we came here, we were under the impression that fireworks were illegal in Gardner. And then the night of the 4th, we thought we were being invaded because of all the fireworks that were going on. So my point to that is, if we're not allowed to have the opportunity to light off fireworks on the 4th and for the one night and make it legal, then I would ask that the ban on fireworks be fully enforced to the full extent of the law, and fines enforced as well. Because I've had neighbors light them off all night long. People have called the police on the neighbors because it is illegal, and they continue to light off fireworks all night long. And I think I'm quite confident that we've all been in this situation here in Gardner. So I think that's all my comments on the subject. So thank you.
Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks for making a special trip, Ryan.
Thank you, Ryan.
Hello. My name's Carol Lang, and my kids graduated here. They grew up here. That was my home, and we have moved away since then, but we still come back here a lot. And, of course, we were here at another meeting, and, of course, we do have a fireworks stand in Edgerton as of now with my husband, Chris, and business partner, Julie. And first of all, I want to say I'm so sorry about your kids with autism. I can relate. I have a nephew with autism, and we have a son with traumatic brain injury that we dealt with since he was 5. So I do understand that, and I do understand that there's a difference in children, because both that I'm speaking of absolutely love fireworks. And so there is a difference in children with disabilities also, but I totally am not trying to dismiss her position on this. Of course, we're for it. We love celebrating our freedom, the way the world is today, even more so. I mean, the United States is one great country to be living in, and we need to really appreciate what we have here, and I don't think we celebrate enough of our freedom. We just kind of looked over a few of the issues here we got to see a kind of a preliminary proposal that you guys are sending out for possibility if you do pass this. And so we do have some things that we noticed on there that we kind of wanted to bring to your attention. Since we do deal with this, I've been selling fireworks since 1975. Kind of telling my age, I started out in Spring Hill in a little 4x8 piece of plywood when Johnson County outlawed them. I was right over the line in Spring Hill where I grew up at that. Some of the main things that we noticed that really popped out to me would be the burn ban. We've had a stand in Spring Hill from the day when they first opened the sale of fireworks in Spring Hill, since that's where I first started out before they outlawed them, and I had to quit and move elsewhere. And then now they've come back again. So now that I sold my warehouse, they have it again. But we do sell there, and they had a burn ban that affected us. You guys just jump in here. I don't want to take over this podium. But they did shut us down the first year when we were selling fireworks there. Yes. It totally devastates us, and I mean, you're out so much money. You got your insurance, you got your fee to your property owner, which, you know, they don't want to give you that money back, which can be very expensive. Your electric setup, your phone, credit card machine set up. You've got your fireworks product. Now what are you going to do with it? The staff, the labor that you have setting up, the delivery fee for the trucker bringing in the product. You got your tent rental. advertising, mailers, I mean, the list goes on and on. I mean, we put out a lot of money. You know, people look at it and go, oh my gosh, you're just, you know, raking in the bucks, but they don't see all that bucks that goes out way ahead. And so when somebody comes in and says, sorry, burn ban, you can't sell anymore, my thing would be to be like which we went to Spring Hill and said, this just devastated us. I mean, I can't even tell you what it is, because we've never had that happen to us. And all the other vendors, you know, they went and argued the same point. So Spring Hill listened to us, and they went ahead and adopted that if there is a burn ban, which I'm saying, if there's a burn ban, they shouldn't be shooting fireworks. I'm not saying they should. But instead of banning the sale, ban the use and enforce it. You know, be strong about it and say, you know, you can buy them, but you're not shooting them now. You know, and whether you put another date they can shoot them, or they hold them till New Year's, or, you know, I'm not for sure if you guys allow New Year's, but Spring Hill does. But it's just totally devastating to us. We'd rather be shut down way before we get the permit, you know, because we're ordering our fireworks now, you know, and so.
Come up to the mic there, because it's for the people online.
Not only that, just so that she doesn't forget to mention this, it takes the sales revenue away from the city, and the people will go elsewhere and get them. And so then you're going to lose out on what you could potentially make off the tax revenue also. So I just wanted to throw that in real quick, because it's devastating to us, and it can have a retro effect on the city also for not allowing us to sell at all after putting out quite a bit of money, just, you know, to try and get it.
And then also, like, I have spoke to, like, organizations that would be, like, trying to do it as a fundraiser. So then you would be shutting them down to not making any money for the organization. Like, I talked to the Gardner dance team, and they're on board. They would definitely want to stand to help fundraise for their trips and whatever they need to do.
And it's great teaching and great work ethics. I mean, our kids, I guarantee you, they can outwork a lot of people, because they're used to dealing with people, running registers. You know, it's just putting up hard-working individuals, I guarantee it, and they just have loved it, because, you know, we've done it for years and brought our kids up in it. So it just creates good work ethic also. And so, like I said, and she's already talked to somebody that if we're able to have a stand here, that's her daughter, you know, was one of the main in the dance group for many years, and so they have a good relationship there, and so they're always looking for another fundraiser, and that would be a great opportunity for them. Put the money back into the community. But what was something else we had here? Oh, I was a little confused when looking at the regulation proposal here. There's a $1,000 permit, but reading through it, there was like 3 different permits that you require, like a short-term special use permit, a seasonal fireworks retailer permit, and a sign permit. Is that all included in that $1,000?
Yes.
Or are those all separate?
No, it's all included.
That's all included part, okay. I was a little confused on that when I was reading it, so I wasn't for sure. Also the dates, I noticed the 27th was crossed out. Is that something that you're going to change to the 28th, or due to the permit problem?
That was, I addressed that, was because of the current city code only allows for a 7-day short-term special use permit, so it would require.
Special use.
Right, it would require a change to the city code, and they have to go through a process to get that done.
Yeah, and I mean, like some other towns even shorten it, so I mean, it's not a, you know.
Like Baldwin has theirs from the 1st of the 4th, and they shoot off on the 3rd of the 4th.
So that is an option. I
That
mean,
is
we're
an
not here
option.
just saying, yes, of course, usually if you're open longer, you're gonna do a little bit better, but sometimes not, because people know those are the only days you're open, so then you're just gonna be slammed those days. But it would cut down the amount of days that they're shooting, you know, so, because unfortunately, you know, if they have them in their hands, sometimes they are shooting them, but.
And one thing I'd like to point out too is, like, you know, they were talking, you know, M80s and all that kind of stuff. M80s are illegal. Have been for 30
Many years.
So are bottle rockets.
Yeah.
You know, we've been in business for so many years that because we do it legal, so you are going to have legal fireworks in the city limits, and so people going outside somewhere
and buying the illegal stuff and bringing it in.
Or making it in their basement. Well, if they
Because
can
if
get
you
it.
have it accessible, it's, you know, you're able to, they're able to get it. If they're not able to get it, they'll go somewhere else and get it and get the wrong stuff, the bad stuff.
Firecrackers in general have a limited amount of powder in them, regardless if it's a little bitty, ladyfinger type firecracker or one of those tubular type firecrackers. They all have the same amount of fire, composition in them. So they're all gonna be about the same noise level. M80s, like I said, are, used to be very, very loud, but they're very, very illegal, and they're never sold on our stand. About the loudest item I can think of would be some mortar artillery shells. They typically are designed to go up in the sky and blow up there, not on the ground, so, those would be the only thing, and we'd be more than willing to educate you and the public what you're getting and the noise and the level and how to properly use them too. That's, you know, a good stand owner and manager is more than willing to help share that education and that knowledge.
Well, generally, we try and keep public comments to 5 minutes at a shot. We had 3 of you up here, so gave a little bit of leeway.
We just want to let
but-
you know, we're open to any questions you may have in our field.
And, yeah,
so.
don't go anywhere. There is the chance that we might ask you to come back up.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Make one quick comment real quick. I'm sorry,
Sure.
just real quick. I know we talked about PTSD and we talked about autism, but the numbers were very, you know, the percentages were small. What about the other percent of people that do want to enjoy and use fireworks? And that's all I want to say. Thank you.
Other public comment? No one else coming forward. Questions for Chief Purdy or any of the people offering testimony? Lee, we'll start with you.
Okay. Chief, I asked you this last time. I was looking for facts, figures, something to point to. The question is, what is it that you believe is effective about the current ordinance, the current ban? Because, and I ask this question
Right.
because every time the Royals,
Right.
because every time the Royals hit a home run, every time the Chiefs score a touchdown, New Year's, 4th of July, you name it, it's like World War III in my neighborhood.
It's not me.
And it's not Rich.
And I told you last time, this is probably the single most violated ordinance that we have on the books. But it also keeps some people on the sidelines. And anytime you can reduce the risk to people, one of the stats I gave you last time was in 2014, in Kansas, 30% of the people that were injured and went to hospital were bystanders. 34% of the people that were injured and went to hospital between 2011 and 2014 were children. So, I mean, yes, it is violated, and yes, from a police standpoint, it is very difficult to police the city because we don't have the officers to respond to every violation. And that's one of the reasons why, as a rule in Kansas City, people typically didn't get arrested unless they were repeat violators. We just took their fireworks and destroyed them.
So you mentioned some folks are sitting on the sidelines currently because of the illegal nature of the fireworks.
Right.
Who are we sidelining? Who, I mean,
I'm
because
sure there's people in this chamber that don't do it, that
sideline.
want to do it and don't do it because it's illegal.
Actually, I've got a little anecdotal evidence there.
You have left end of the table over there?
Yeah, well, no,
Cheryl?
I've got family members that for years would have 4th of July get-together and would have fireworks, and they would stop shooting them when the police came around. And then one day, they didn't stop shooting them before the police came around, and they got ticketed. And from that point forward, no more fireworks. It's not that much different than a stop sign. Some people are going to roll through a stop sign, some people are going to violate a stop sign, but, most people are gonna follow the law. I would imagine that's,
I guess the bottom line is, what is the public safety interest that's being served by an ordinance that we don't enforce, have never enforced, and we know that it's almost impossible to enforce? It's not like a stop sign. This is completely separate and different than a stop sign. You can sit by a stop sign and you can ticket people that go through it, but I don't think, I don't think we have enough officers to round up all the people that are shooting fireworks. And you can go down my street, just down my street, Dogwood, on the 4th of go on the 5th of July, and look at all the trash and stuff from folks that have shot things.
Oh, I agree. I mean,
So-
we do not have enough resources to get everybody that's firing them off. I mean, admittedly, there's nobody in law enforcement that will tell you that we do. But, I mean, again, most cities still ban their use because they're dangerous, and it's not always the people that are shooting them off that are put in harm's way. It's the most vulnerable people, the bystanders, the children, that are getting hurt the most. So anything we can do to advance their safety in that cause, I mean, that, to me, from a public safety standpoint, that's worthwhile.
Todd, you're looking like you want to.
Okay, well, what about something a little bit more dramatic? What about limiting it to one day, or limiting it to 6 hours or 8 hours in a day? I mean, in that way.
Really loud, all at once.
Well, yeah, but at the same time, people would know, theoretically, maybe I won't be there that afternoon, or maybe I'll go somewhere else, or at least I've got like 6 to 8 hours, and we're done.
I think if you crack the door open, people are gonna come flooding through.
Yeah.
And, we can't enforce the speeding on that. We don't have enough people to get everybody speeding. But that doesn't mean we're gonna eliminate speed limits. I mean, it still impacts some people.
Right, you can get some of them, but,
Right.
how many fireworks tickets have you written in the last year?
We didn't write any last year. And I did find out, we did go to 24
How many
calls.
speeding tickets did you write last year?
Me personally, or the department?
Oh, the department.
I don't know. I'd have to get that. Yeah.
So what you're advocating for is stepped up enforcement? Because obviously, I'm sure that they can write more tickets. And
I
like
wouldn't
I said, I
advocate
have anecdotal evidence.
Yeah, I wouldn't advocate for
they've
that, because I know the
written
problem.
tickets in the past.
Yeah, I wouldn't advocate for that, because I know the problem's too widespread, and it would be, we don't have the staff, and quite frankly, I don't think we have the funding for the staff. So, what is the point of the ban?
Well, I would say we step up enforcement with the mayor's Christmas trees lighting, fireworks, and then Celebration Park. Those are two big ones that go off every year.
Well,
I mean, and let's face it, those are huge displays that the city puts on that we're not worried about PTSD and autism folks when those go off, because you can hear those at my house, either one.
I will mention that there was a significant number of chatter on social media after the most recent mayor's Christmas tree lighting ceremony.
About what was going on?
There were a whole bunch of people who were getting on saying, "Oh, my kids are going crazy. The dogs are going crazy. What happened? It sounds like gunshots. There's, the ground was shaking and all this other stuff."
And actually, I would say I would be perfectly okay with no fireworks at the Christmas in the Park celebration. It would save the city a little bit of money on the bottom line, and I think that the 4th of July celebration, though, is at Celebration Park. People know where it is. There's not the same amount of density surrounding Celebration Park, and they know it's going to happen right around the time that it gets dark enough. I think it's planned that way, right, Jeff? And our events at Celebration Park to celebrate our country's independence have become more robust in recent years and better attended, correct?
Correct. We continue to see an increase in attendance. It's a full house.
We've got a new special events coordinator hired this year.
We have, yes.
We hoping to do a nice show at Celebration Park again this year?
I think that's probably a more effective way to address this problem, than a ban, is just make it awesome. And people go there and they don't shoot them off at their house.
Yeah, well, I really like that idea. And honestly, you put on a good enough, 4th of July show, people from the neighboring communities are going to come.
Yeah.
I would mention too, and I understand that the fireworks stand, the seasonal stand is a high risk, high reward, but to allow people to sell fireworks and then tell them they can't use them, that just increases opportunities for them to be laying around. And when you leave fireworks laying around, especially during the summertime, and kids are around, you're just begging for something really, really bad to happen. And they do put out the money to buy the fireworks. There is some risk, but the reward that they get for a week's worth of work or 2 weeks is pretty substantial.
I wouldn't be in favor of making someone invest in a whole bunch of stuff and then telling them, sorry, you can't do anything with that. I mean, that to me, I'm going to go on the side of, we're adults, you have to be an adult to buy these things. You need to be responsible for yourself and your family, and what we do up here, I've said it before, legislating anything will not make people be better parents, so we need to just move that right out of our minds that that's going to happen. So I don't know if you guys saw the poll, the informal poll on social media that you're talking about, but it was about 30-1 for fireworks versus against, and I received a couple of emails from people about for it, so.
I got one.
Right.
I got one email. I got one.
So.
We've got a representative from the fire district here as well, and actually I'd kind of like to ask Dennis a question here. Just, the staff recommendation from the Gardner Police Department, from the police chief, is that keeping the current regulation which bans the discharge and sale of fireworks within the city. Do you have any good reason why you wouldn't
I got several good reasons why, but we're kind of stuck in the middle here, to be honest with you, because we have Edgertons in our fire district, and we allow it in Edgerton, or they allow it, and, we're not bouncing on Edgerton to not allow it. But, there's pros and cons to all those kind of things. There's pros that you could generate some revenue for the city by selling it. You have to understand that we have additional costs during those times because we will bring in extra staff. Our call load typically does go up. If our weather conditions continue on like what we've had, it's going to be disastrous, and I would love to think, Mr. Melton, you're correct, that adults would be smart enough to help figure this out, but if you'd seen some of the wildland fires that we've been fighting in the last 2 weeks, I wonder where it is some days on windy days like today. But, some of the cons to it, we do run a lot more injuries during that time too. Kids, they'll fire something off or whatever. You always have the chance of setting a field on fire, grass on fire. I don't know if you watched the news yesterday afternoon in Merriam, little grass fire, runs across the road, hits a big 2-story car garage and, burns it down, kills an animal inside. That could have been a house just as easy, so it can happen pretty quick, especially if it's windy. We're in a very high fire danger area right now. And usually around July the 4th, it doesn't get much better. So, the fire department's kind of neutral on this, to be honest with you. We'll deal with it if it's passed. I think, it is extremely difficult to police it. The city I worked for prior to this, Overland Park, we tried to totally stop it, and you can't stop it. I do think there's things that we could do if we do continue to ban it that could notify the public, like, putting some of the street fluorescent signs out that say, fireworks are banned, and there is fines that go with it, but you do have to write tickets. You can't say, well, we didn't write any tickets last year. You hand out a few $500 tickets, and mom and dad have to come pay that ticket. The fireworks are usually pretty well stopped, but you know, fortunately, you know, bottle rockets are illegal. We don't have wood roofs like we used to have. I can tell you from history that it was not uncommon to take 3 or 4 of us off in a 3-day period in Overland Park at one time, just because of bottle rockets. So, you know, it's better than it used to be, but, our stance is we'll deal with it. If you pass it and you lift the ban, then we're gonna staff up anyway. Our call volume goes up, so we're really kinda neutral, to be honest with you on it, and, we'll handle it when it comes down.
I had a question for you, Dennis. You know, one of the things that I've noticed about Gardner in the time that I've lived here is the amount of ag property that is mixed inside the, you know, look north of the high school, for instance, which backs up to housing on Poplar Road and backs up to housing on Waverly Road, and you've got a great big agricultural field there. You know, with the kind of, you know, dry conditions we've had and the wind that just always seems to blow in Gardner. I mean, Chicago doesn't really seem to have anything on us when it comes to being the windy city. I mean, does that concern you as a
Absolutely. We've actually pinpointed some areas in the city right now, and there are some areas within the city that where they haven't been mowing the right-of-ways and vacant lots haven't been mowed. The upkeep and the grass is pretty high. It backs up to a lot of structures that, you know, all it takes is possibly a cigarette or, you know, somebody playing around. You know, I think they caught somebody in Lynn County throwing matches out of a car, setting fields on fire. So, I mean, there are some really people out there that are doing some pretty bad things, and we do throughout the city. We actually went and burned some of the right-of-ways ourselves in a controlled situation, and we took 6 people out there with us to burn an area about the size of this building. And we don't do it on windy days, and we're going to do Thursday, we're going to do 90, pardon me?
What day is the not windy day?
Well, we've had some that have been non-red flag days and stuff like that, but, you know, if you do it correctly, you can control what it is. We're going to do 97 acres of farmland this week sometime. But I have some real big concerns, and Chief Kirk does too, that we have areas within the city right now that with the wind that we're having, it's just going to take one cigarette or somebody playing around out there that we're going to take houses out with it. I mean, we will not be able to control it with, you know, the evergreens, what they call the red evergreens, which is actually weed, but they're dried right now, and it's, when they say fire alert, red fire alert, we're under that right now. And I noticed it was sprinkling a little bit when I came in. Thank God, I hope we do get a little bit of rain, but with the wind, it dries right back out. But, Mary, you bring up a good point. We have some areas in this city that right now that concern us deeply, so.
Anybody else have questions?
I think
go ahead.
go on. I think it comes back to, we're a city of 20,000 people. And I don't know if, Chief, if you have any of the, any numbers on, you know, cities of 20,000 people that have significant, you know, urban density. I would say personally that most of them don't allow for fireworks. Am I correct in that?
Most of the, I mean, there's only 3 cities in the whole county that allow them. I didn't look beyond Johnson County and the metro area.
I'll give you one example. Derby, Kansas, 22,000 people, they allow fireworks. Same basic ordinance that the chief has proposed here.
Similar density?
Similar density. It's a suburb of Wichita.
Mm-hmm. I'm familiar with Derby and Andover. Does Andover allow them? Because they're about the same size.
Not sure.
Yes, a friend of mine lives there, so, and they're really into fireworks, I mean, like really into fireworks.
Okay. So that was one of the questions I had, and the second question I had was, you know, regardless of what happens with this ordinance, you know, the M80s, and I've heard them in my neighborhood, the big artillery shells that go off, that's still posing a significant threat to folks in our community, from, you know, PTSD sufferers to broad spectrum autism to Down syndrome. And I've heard from quite a few from that community. either informally or, over the phone or through email. And that's a concern regardless of what happens with this ordinance tonight. So I don't know if we can come up with an enforcement plan or have some sort of seasonal staffing or something like that to crack down on that, if we can possibly do it. Because that is a serious threat, regardless of what happens here.
Well, and if we decide to keep the ban in place, then I think maybe we need to revisit this before the 4th comes around.
I think, just speaking from a quasi-political standpoint, having an ordinance that allows the use of fireworks with very strict guidelines on the use of fireworks enables us some kind of some control and some leverage to go and actually write those tickets. Whereas an outright ban, it's wild, wild west out there. Seems like to me that if we draw a box around it and we say this is what we can do, it's a lot easier to go after the folks that are operating outside the line.
I mean, anecdotally, just from my own personal experience, the last 10 years has gotten a lot worse, and that's with a ban in place.
Same here.
So,
Christina?
Well, I mean, I don't really have any questions or anything, but I will just say, I mean, I came in here tonight thinking that repealing it and replacing it was the right thing. I guess from my perspective, this is one of those things that when people talk about their child with autism or PTSD, it's easy to sit up here and say, well, they're not the majority, so that's okay, because we're not the ones dealing with that. And I think we often, just human nature does, hey, it's not my problem, I don't know what that's like to have to comfort somebody, I don't know what that's like. And I think it's important, I think it's very important that this is not somebody that's out in a public place and who is making a choice to listen to this or have this. This is somebody in their home who is being impacted. So I don't know.
That's an argument of legal versus illegal and whether or not that has any bearing on the fact that people actually shoot fireworks. In my opinion, it doesn't have any bearing on that fact whatsoever. In my experience here in the city of Gardner, it doesn't matter if you have PTSD or autism, you're going to experience fireworks in this city, unfortunately. So whether we make them legal or illegal, it unfortunately hasn't mattered.
well, I think the better way to do this, and I think that there were two things that came out here that I glommed onto. The first thing was that if the municipality puts on a great fireworks display, it's going to deter people from shooting them off in their own yards because they're going to go to the big fireworks display. Secondly, if you lift a ban marginally and allow the little poppers to go off, which aren't going to particularly hurt people, and really strongly crack down on the M80s, strongly crack down on the big mortars, which are really what hurt people with the PTSD and the broad spectrum autism and the Down syndrome situations, I think that would be a better solution.
And we could even.
But you got to crack down on those big boomers. That's the problem.
Right. I think we could even take some or all of the proceeds that we earn from the sale of fireworks and direct it towards our displays.
Councilman, I just want to make a point. The mortars are not prohibited in either this ordinance or by the state. Bottle rockets are just the rockets with a stick or a wire. The mortars would not be banned. And I'm not sure how you would even do that.
I like mortars. They're fun.
Mr. Mayor, can I say something? Because I didn't do my job for chief reading this last month.
We need public comment.
We did close public comments, but Jason being here from the chamber and providing a different
Well, first let me say, I
different
don't live in
perspective.
Gardner, so I don't have a dog in the fight. But
you know, I did mention to Chief, my wife and I talk about fireworks a lot, because where I live, they are allowed and so forth, and my wife works at Children's Mercy Hospital. And there was questions last time I was here about statistics, and there is a good study that was done back in the mid-90s, and it was done at Ohio State University. It takes into it, all the data came from Kansas City, from Children's Mercy. And I don't have access to that study tonight, but I know where to get access to it, and I can gladly send it on to Chief. But I think what was interesting when I looked at some of it, obviously it was a long paper, it was in Pediatrics Magazine, and it was interesting because, Councilman Shute, you mentioned about the M80s and that, and actually I remember one of the things in the study specifically stated that 2/3, it was a longitudinal study, so it was done over 20 years, it was the first one of its kind, and particularly one of the things it said was 2/3 of the injuries that they had shown were Class C fireworks, not actually Class B fireworks, which were outlawed, I know, way back before I was born. So I thought it was an interesting thing. I think, you know, I'm just one of those that believes that you use good data to make decisions, and I know this is one of those that's a tough, because there are people who are for it and people who are against it. But if it's something that I can add to the mix, I'd be glad to send it on to Chief. I mentioned I knew about it before, and I kind of forgot, and so I figured I'd own up to it publicly, Chief, sorry. But, yeah, and so I think it's just a good opportunity to take a look at some data that came out of Kansas City, and for what it's worth. So.
Thank you, Jason.
Thanks, James.
I mean, there's ways that we can go here. It sounds like Jason's actually got empirical data, which, if we wanted to see that, we'd need to table the discussion, you know, or we could...
I think we owe those people an answer, just me. I mean, because they're getting ready to order, so I'd say we just say yes or no and move on.
I'm ready to do that.
I'm ready to do it.
Well, we've got an ordinance number 2513. I would entertain a
I would
motion.
actually like to make an amendment, though, to where we can allow, if it's okay, that we allow for sale even during the burn, if there is a burn ban, just not discharge. The recommendation from them about that, if they, what is?
I mean, you can, let's...
I think we should let the mayor have discretion on that. I mean, it's in the ordinance currently that it's his discretion, so he can negotiate with the business owners and make that decision. If there's a burn ban in place, right?
I don't know, I mean, the mayor, I know he's, you know, running for Senate and all, it's gonna be tough on him right
It's
there around
currently in the
4th of
ordinance.
July.
The way the ordinance currently reads, it's the mayor's prerogative to prohibit the sale of fireworks during a burn ban.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that right, Ryan? You were looking at me, so.
Yeah.
So, I don't know,
yes, I'm glad that this is on the record and being videotaped, that he's ready to let the mayor have discretion, so.
It's already in the ordinance.
He's just pointing it out.
Somebody else wrote it, not me.
I know.
I think though, if, you know, if we're going to do something like this, I would say, we really need to look at enforcement, stricter enforcement, as part of this. So it needs to be understood that, we're gonna have to,
And part of that I mentioned last time, part of that is not just our discretion not to write tickets. You also have to, I mean, we're not gonna write tickets when they're not gonna prosecute people, and when you're only touching a few of the offenders, the prosecutor and or the judge are not going to prosecute people, and they're not gonna fine them. So I didn't wanna put my people in a position where, yeah, go out and write tickets, confiscate all the fireworks, and then all the charges just go nowhere. I mean, that's a waste of time. If you repeal the ban, then it kind of changes the dynamic to where, I mean, if people are allowed to use them, then the complaints are gonna be about, people are gonna try to shoot them in the street, they're gonna shoot them on the sidewalk, and we're gonna get calls like that, and we'll get a
That's
lot of them.
currently what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get a lot of those, and it'll be extremely difficult to enforce, because by the time we get there, I mean, we've got to catch, and most time it's gonna be some little 9-year-old with his punk sticking out and running, and it's a difficult ordinance to enforce. And I can direct my people, if you see a violation, write a ticket, but then again, you're taking, if you've got a 9-year-old, I mean, there's nothing you can do with them. I mean, 17, 18-year-olds, yeah, they may, throw a 1,000-brick thing of black cats in the middle of the street, but, I mean, they're not out there shooting most of the fireworks.
Somebody's guilty over there.
They're trying to blow trees apart and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's part of the challenge is, we're not gonna go pick up a 9 or 10-year-old or a 12 or 13-year-old.
So is there anything to be done especially for the trash afterwards? I mean, they're concerned,
You
I
can
mean,
get
real
them for,
concerns.
you can get them for littering, but only if, I mean, we could talk to the prosecutor and say, yeah, if we get a signature from a complainant on littering, but even then, I mean, you can see your neighbors shoot off fireworks for 3 hours, come out the next morning, there's trash all over their yard, you can't do anything about it. I mean, you can't say, yeah, I watched them shoot it and then I watched the trash fall from the sky. That's, it's really difficult to enforce that stuff.
You don't think limiting it to one day, I mean, is a compromise? All right, July 4th, you can set them off.
Like Councilman,
Moore
said, if you're gonna sell them for a week and limit them to a day, it's really not gonna make any difference. They're gonna do it anyway. If you have fireworks in hand, it's so bad, there's so many violations. It's so pervasive that people violate the law that, even selling them from the 28th up through the 2nd without allowing them, it's gonna be.
Even as the law is now, as we've been talking, it's difficult to enforce. I mean,
right.
Start with one day and see how it goes.
Well, honestly, on my street, I hear fireworks, but I think that most people, and especially in a city like Gardner, are, I would say the majority, maybe not most, but I would say the majority of people are law-abiding. And so if 50% aren't going to do it because it's against the law, and that makes it easier on the people with PTSD or the people that have special, circumstances, and if it lowers the risk of fire and injury by 50%, then let's lean on the law-abiding people to minimize that risk on that day or those group of days.
I just still think that it's, you're an adult, you should be able to make these decisions on your own. You can go buy cigarettes, beer, all this other stuff all year long, and we're talking about a week here where we go, we can't trust you little kids with those fireworks.
Actually, and this is an interesting point. Because you say you're an adult, you can make a decision on this,
right.
And you can, because there are places that you can buy fireworks legally, and there are places where you can go and shoot them off legally, and so you can make you can go to Edgerton.
I don't live in Edgerton.
I understand that, but if you're saying you're an adult, if you want to make an adult decision and go someplace where you know that it's legal, then that's the mature decision to make.
But I'm a property owner in Gardner and wanting to exercise my property rights. That's, I guess, my point.
I think a bigger point is just that if I guess the argument that we have to have here is the mayor thinks that having the ban in place is actually causing a certain percentage of the population to refrain from using fireworks. I happen to totally disagree with that. I don't shoot fireworks because it's just not a way I want to spend my money. And I think some of my neighbors that don't shoot fireworks probably feel the same way. I don't care whether this gets passed or doesn't get passed. For me personally, as a citizen of Gardner, it just won't matter at all, because I don't like to spend my money on fireworks. So I think that's what it really boils down to, in terms of whether or not people are gonna shoot them or not. I don't think anybody really even notices whether whether it's illegal or legal. They just shoot them if they feel like shooting them, and they don't shoot them if they don't feel like shooting them.
If they wanna shoot them, they'll shoot them. And we find that all over the place in our neighborhoods. I guess Chris lives in a better neighborhood.
No.
On the other side of the tracks.
Actually, we have an ordinance, number 2513. I would entertain a motion.
Real quick, did we cover the, changing the ordinance so that, for the the fire ban? What were your thoughts on that?
Well, just keep it the way it is. It's the mayor's discretion.
Okay.
Yeah, I wanna keep it the way it is.
Okay. All right.
If I could offer just a couple of points. These were some issues that the chief covered in his presentation about information that we got from the city's pyrotechnician, which I was unaware we had such a position. One of the points was striking the word promptly from subsection B to K. So that would be a recommended revision. And the other revision that the chief referenced was in subsection B to G, to add a sentence at the end of that paragraph that said, or which would state, proximate fireworks may be fired within the distance limitations of NFPA 1126.
All right.
Well, I'm gonna say I may end up voting in favor of this. However, next year, I may bring this up again if it turns out to be.
Right. I may too, you never know.
Yeah.
But how bad it is.
Well, I guess I would make the motion with
And then
the amendments.
The only other thing we needed to cover is the period of time when the sale can be made. If code currently limits us to the 7-day short-term special use permit, are we gonna keep it within that time period, or are we?
Yes. Yes,
At least
strike the
initially,
27.
Okay, so we need to make an oral motion to whatever date we're gonna pick for that.
If you said the 28th, it would just be a.
Just an extra, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. That amendment. Okay.
There's a motion on the floor.
Second?
Motion.
Is there a second?
No.
You're not gonna second this, Rich?
Second.
Motion Moore and second Melton,
I thought I was giving you opportunity.
that we adopt ordinance number 2513 relating to the discharge and sale of fireworks with amendments as previously noted. City Clerk, can you call the roll?
Councilmember Harrison?
No.
Councilmember Melton?
Yes.
Councilmember Moore?
Yes.
Councilmember Shute?
Yes.
Councilmember Winters?
Yes.
Ordinance number 2513 passed. I'm sorry, did we, Shelley, you said we had something scheduled for executive session, I'm not seeing it on
Yes.
the.
I offered an option if you, depending on the meeting, if you wanted to discuss the golf course with, mineral rights. I can bring it to you next meeting if you'd like.
I got it, if you want it, it's up to you.
Let's do it. First let's do the council page, so it's the LDC. But I'd be happy to hear mineral rights discussion.
Okay, we're gonna move to council updates, before adjourning to, recessing into executive session. So, first I'm gonna ask if, council has anything for staff. Gonzalo?
Nothing.
Jeff? Larry?
Just a quick update on the cargo containers over to Austin. We have talked this morning to the owner of the property. He did come into our office after we sent him a couple of letters through his legal representative, and they are in the process of being moved. They will be gone by or before the 29th of the month. He has to make arrangements to get the proper trucks to get them moved over to Missouri.
Very good.
You didn't have to talk to him about the special assessments they owe. Have you, did you?
No, sorry.
No, okay, I just wondering.
Ryan?
We can arrange that.
Okay.
Nothing.
Chief?
Nope.
Jeannie?
No.
Matt?
No.
Ryan?
I'm reconsidering on the executive session. There's nothing that really we need to keep confidential as part of the attorney-client privilege. I can just tell you, I've written a memo, given it to staff, to Jeff, about the mineral rights out there at the golf course. And in short, what the law provides in Kansas is, we have the surface rights out there, and then the mineral rights holder has the mineral rights. Beyond that, the deeds don't specify anything. And what the law in Kansas says is that we have the right to enjoy the surface rights to the maximum amount possible. However, the mineral rights holder has an easement to enter upon our property and to use the surface, but only to the extent necessary to extract the minerals. And if they enter upon the surface and cause damage to the surface, then we could have a remedy against the mineral rights holder. So it's kind of a fine balance between the two. So that's basically the situation that we have out there. I think it's probably in everybody's best interest, the mineral rights holder as well as the cities, to sit down and more specifically describe who's going to have the right to go where and do what. That way, everybody knows exactly what the game plan is, and so that's been my recommendation to Jeff.
Okay.
And we've had some of those discussions, and as I indicated, the initial reaction from the mineral rights owner is that he's not interested in releasing those to the city at this time. And in fact, his interest is in the future to potentially investigate opportunities to do some additional drilling. He says there's still oil out there. Obviously, he's not pursuing that aggressively at this point in time with the price of oil. But again, he's interested in sitting down to have some discussions with us. So I think we'll investigate that a little bit further and see what we can come up with.
Yeah. Well, and that's, Cheryl, who would be, if we were to get into negotiation with them, is that something
We would be
that the city
talking about-
attorney would?
absolutely.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. So, all right. Cheryl, do you have anything else?
Yes.
Or Ryan, it was?
No,
That's
it.
Cheryl?
Yes, I want to touch base on the sub-area plan that we discussed at the last council meeting.
Yes.
I have had an opportunity to go back and review the planning commission tape, go back and look at the minutes, review the study, as well as review a summary of the property owners' concerns and comments from staff. I have also reached out to council members to make sure that we get the names of any property owners that have contacted them. I've received most of those back, and I have recommendations of where I think we need to go next. I think that it's important for us to have a meeting with the property owners, make sure that we've accurately captured what we think are the issues. After that, I think we should have a leadership meeting with the planning commission and the leadership of the city council, and I'd like to have the leadership of those groups kind of reach a consensus on where we go from that point. So that would be my recommendation for next steps.
So we're talking mayor, council president.
And council
vice president, chair and vice chair of the planning commission.
Yes.
I'm,
I'm good with that.
yeah.
Is that okay?
You know, at some point, I would like to see us get some of the groups together. We've done it in the past. It's been a few years.
Okay,
We can talk about that later.
all right,
Anything else?
that's it.
Okay. Does, council have anything for staff? Rich?
Larry, I didn't know if you could touch on, what's going on with that, property on the circle with all the trailers there was a lot of talk about it at the RV trailer night. Chris?
525.
View Circle or?
Yeah.
The property owner, I went out Saturday and had a discussion with that property owner and met with them. They have taken care of 2 of the 3 items that we had sent the letter for, and they are in the process of finding a person to do the paving for the driveway.
Okay. So they pulling permits then to get that done and all that good stuff?
We don't require a permit for driveways,
Oh.
but we do a site analysis with them as far as setbacks and so forth from the road right-of-way and from the property lines. So there will be a review as far as location is concerned, but not, and then we have driveway specifications through Public Works as to thickness and so forth, but that'll all be handled by whoever their contractor is.
Awesome. All right, thank you. I think, I did have something I wanted to talk to council about. I know last year I asked for Jeff for some stuff through Cheryl, for stuff at the pool and different, and I know right now the pool and the parks and everything is run by pretty much city staff and some kids. I would like to see us offer up opportunities to local businesses where we could rent out that space to like a Blazers or a Pizza Hut or whatever, and not have the city manage that, and that way, now you have a totally unique experience at these ball fields and the pool and everything. So it may be that when people come to town and do these events, Jeff's calling them going, hey, this event is here, and we've got out here at our place, we've got Pizza Hut or McDonald's or whatever it is available to have food there for them, so they don't have to leave. And that would help us generate revenue on the city side. I think something we ought to look at as a council.
Well, something else that came to my mind when you said that is food carts.
Right.
It'd be great to have food carts out of these places where, and I don't know if that even, is that allowed under our current ordinances?
We actually do, when we have events particularly, and you can weigh in on this, Jeff, when we have like 4th of July event, we have actually had some of them out there.
I mean, that'd be a great way to derive some revenue and give people some options.
We have, and in fact, I've had a conversation with Larry as well on the permitting process for those and looking at potential options and expanding on that a little bit in some of our events and
Awesome.
some of the new events and things that we'll be offering. And that can be tied to certain facilities as well.
Right.
Maybe not necessarily every day, but on certain events and things.
We had a problem last year when I took the girls to the pool. I mean, we're like running over there, and I'm like, I really don't want a hot dog for dinner that's been on that roller for I don't know how long.
It's fresh on the roller, Councilman.
Right, well, so I'm thinking, man, if I could order Blazers right here, that would be awesome. Or ice cream, man.
The lines at the concession stands, particularly during tournament days, is very long. And, you can stand there for 10, 15, 20 minutes, and your kid might be playing a game, and you miss part of it. And so
I think the one thing you need to keep in mind, too, with operations like the Blazers and so forth, if it's not a food truck, if they're in-house, if
Right.
they're in your facility, there's certain things that they need. Our facilities don't have grease traps.
Right.
We're not doing that kind of food prep there. So there's those kinds of things that you have to think about as well.
I know some delivery guys, I'm just saying.
Okay.
That was it for me,
That's-
so.
So what are we gonna do with that, actually?
Well,
I mean, is
then
that
that's-
something that we could poll some, or Jeff could
Is that
poll
what we
some
wanna-
local
yeah.
businesses to,
yeah.
just
See
see
if-
if that's even an option?
To poll businesses?
Yeah,
if they do-
pull some information, because I know we've had, Wally's done things for the festival and stuff, and
Mhm.
I'm not sure how he would
Sure.
I mean, I think they need some consistency, so I'd just be interested in what they
We-
think of that.
We could take a look at it. The food truck business is really hot right now.
Yes, it is.
They're mobile, they go to the events, so that's certainly the first and foremost, that's the first approach to take a look at it. How many local businesses that we have that are operating that, I don't have a count, but we can do a little bit of research.
Maybe we spur some economic growth.
I agree.
You do have to remember that the Kansas Board of Agriculture licensed those folks, and there are different licenses for the different ways you sell food and how you prepare it. So as long as they have the proper licenses, we have in place already the special 7-day permits that they could come in and work with Jeff and set those up very quickly, so.
I think that'd be good.
All right. Jen, if we can poll for, some local businesses and look into food trucks and see if there's better options that we can provide.
Will do.
Todd? Lee?
Two things. First, Streets, Sidewalks, and Stormwater Advisory Committee is coming up tomorrow evening, 7 p.m. at the Senior Center, 128 East Park Street. We're going to be talking about a lot of exciting things, not the least of which is low water crossings replacements in the greenways. And we're going to be talking about the pavement management plan some more. We talk about that a lot.
It's always very exciting.
Second thing, I kind of would, because we passed this ordinance with fireworks and because we've heard from some folks about autism and PTSD and from the chief and from the fire department about responsible use and sensitive use of fireworks, maybe a public information campaign leading up to the 4th of July would be a good idea.
I know somebody.
I know, yeah. So I'm just throwing that out there.
On the hook again.
As get people aware of those problems in our community that and maybe have some sensitivity to it, so that we're not visiting this ordinance again next year, because of some problem that was arisen from the, any kind of expanded use. That's all I have.
I like it.
Christine?
I don't have anything, thank you.
Steve?
I'm just gonna thank the staff's work again in getting the funding agreement finalized. Lost in all the fireworks and other discussions is, some tremendous things that happened this evening on the economic development perspective, and we're starting to set ourselves up for some real successes over the next couple of years, and I want to thank the staff for all their hard work on that. And I'm going to challenge the staff to come up with some more big wins like that very soon in the future, and work with our partners at the Chamber and the EDC to make it happen. So, thanks.
We had State of the City last Wednesday. It was as well attended event as I remember having held here at City Hall. It was especially Danica, Jeannie, Ann Forrester, Cheryl, the department directors, and actually, all the staff all year round make these things happen. We've all got copies of our annual report, and honestly, some of us, I'll just say myself, never looked quite so good as I do in that grayscale photo. More than anything, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of accomplishments that we had over the past year. When we showed a video that started listing the accomplishments, and one of them was civic engagement, and we had 12 different lines slide into the frame, and one of them was about the 5 new committees that we had founded. That speaks to the level of public engagement that we've been searching out and having, and let's keep it up. Attendance was down this year at the budget forum and the CIP forum, so let's, I think it's incumbent upon those of us on the governing body and not just staff to encourage people to come when we have events that we want the public's input at. So, it's a challenge to the staff to do a good job of getting the information out, but let's all work together to try and heighten that awareness as elected leaders. And with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Motion, Schutz, second, Melton, that we adjourn. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, any abstention? We stand adjourned. Yep.
Yep.